Sergeant Victor Renick tore the rifle out of Captain Emily Carter's hands and lifted it over his head like a piece of trash he'd dragged out of a ditch. "Look at this, Marines, our new sniper brought a museum piece to a gunfight." Then he opened his fingers and let it drop into the dirt. 40 men laughed. Emily didn't move. She didn't blink. She just stared at that rifle lying in the dust, and something in her face made every laugh in that yard die at the same time. Before we go any further, take 1 second to subscribe to the channel and stay with this story all the way to the end. And do me a favor, drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see just how far this story travels. The convoy truck that brought Captain Emily Carter into Outpost Redstone was 14 years old and complained about every mile of it. She rode in the back with 3 crates of ammunition, a busted radio set, and a young Lance Corporal named Petey Whitfield, who kept sneaking looks at the long canvas case between her boots. He held out for about 20 minutes before curiosity beat discipline. "Ma'am, permission to ask a stupid question." "Those are usually the good ones." "What's in the bag?" "A rifle." "I figured that part, ma'am," he grinned. It's kind of small for a modern system and kind of, I don't know, old-shaped." Emily looked at the case, then back at him. "It's old-shaped because it's old." "How old?" "Older than you. Older than your father, probably." Whitfield laughed, waiting for the punchline. It never came. Her face didn't change. She had a stillness to her that made 20-year-old Marines nervous without knowing why, the kind of stillness that isn't calm at all, but something heavier, something pressed down and held. "You're serious," he said. "I usually am." He didn't ask another question for the rest of the ride, but he kept looking at the bag, and later that night he would tell 6 different people about it, and by morning the whole outpost knew that the new sniper had arrived carrying a rifle that belonged in a glass case in Quantico. That was how it started, not with an insult, with a rumor. Sergeant Victor Renick heard it at 0620 while he was drinking coffee that tasted like it had been brewed through a sock. "They sent us a captain," said Staff Sergeant Alicia Boone, dropping onto the bench across from him. "Sniper school instructor, allegedly. Word is she brought her granddad's deer gun." Renick set his cup down slowly. "Say again." "Woodstock, scratched receiver, scope that looks like it came out of a pawn shop in 1988. "Somebody's yanking your chain?" Whitfield rode in with her. Says she said it out loud, older than his father. Renick laughed once hard the way a man laughs when he's been handed a gift. He had been at Redstone 11 months. He had put 400 and some patrols behind him in 3 deployments. He had a reputation as the man who said the thing everyone else was thinking, and he had built his whole personality on the idea that he had earned the right to. "Well," he said, "this ought to be fun." Boone didn't smile. "Victor, she's a captain. She's a captain with a deer gun. She's still a captain. Rank doesn't stop around, Boone. Gear does. Training does." He stood stretched, cracked his neck. "And if she wants to bring a stick and a string out here where it actually matters, somebody's got to say something before she gets a kid killed." That was the story he told himself. That's the part people always miss. Renick didn't wake up that morning deciding to be cruel. He woke up deciding to be right, and those 2 things wear the same uniform more often than anyone wants to admit. Commander Nathan Cole met her first in the operations shack at 0700 sharp. He'd been running Redstone for 9 months, which was long enough to know exactly what he had. 64 personnel, 2 functioning vehicles out of 5, a radar system that lied about aircraft on humid mornings, a satellite uplink that dropped every time the wind came out of the south. He had asked higher for 3 things in 9 months. He'd gotten none of them. And then without asking for anything, without warning, without so much as a phone call, they sent him a captain. "Captain Emily Carter reporting." "At ease." Cole studied her over the rim of his cup. Mid-30s, sunlines around the eyes that didn't come from a beach. She stood the way people stand when standing still is the only rest they get. "You want to tell me why you're here?" "I was told to report to Redstone, sir." "That's not what I asked." "It's the answer I have, sir." Cole set the cup down. "Captain, I've been in this uniform for 22 years. Nobody sends a shooter with your paperwork to a rock like this one for no reason. Either you're being punished, or I'm about to have a problem, and I'd like to know which before lunch." Something moved behind her eyes then. Not fear, something older. "I'd like to know that too, sir," she said quietly. Cole sat back, that he had not expected. They didn't tell you. They told me to report. They told me to bring my equipment. They told me not to discuss the assignment. With me. With anyone, sir. Cole was quiet for a long moment. Outside, someone dropped a wrench and cursed, and a truck coughed to life and died again. All right, he said finally. Get squared away. Chow's at 11 and Captain. Sir, my Marines talk. They talk a lot. They talk fast, and they aren't always kind about it. If somebody gives you trouble, my door's open. Emily almost smiled. Almost. They won't give me anything I haven't been given before, sir. She was wrong about that, and she'd know it before the sun went down. The motor pool at 1100 was 40 Marines waiting on a hot lunch and looking for entertainment, and Emily Carter walked through the middle of it carrying a canvas case. She wasn't showing off. That's the thing people got wrong later. She was carrying it because she never left it anywhere ever. Not in 9 years, not once, and she had stopped noticing how strange that looked to other people a long time ago. Renick saw her from 30 feet out and raised his voice just enough. There she is. Heads turned. Emily kept walking. Ma'am, he stepped into her path, easy, friendly hands loose. Sergeant Renick, welcome to Redstone. Sergeant, heard you're the one they sent us. That's right. Mind if I ask what you brought? My rifle? Can I see it? Boone, 10 feet back, said his name once low. Victor. He didn't look at her. He kept his eyes on Emily and his voice light, and the whole yard went quiet in that specific way a crowd goes quiet when it senses something worth watching. Emily looked at him for 3 full seconds. Then she knelt, unzipped the case, and lifted the rifle out. It was worse than the rumor. The stock was walnut dark with old oil, and there was a repair down the length of it where the wood had been split and pinned and sanded smooth by somebody's hands a long time ago. The bluing on the barrel had worn through to gray at the muzzle and along the bolt. The scope was steel, not aluminum, and the finish on the turrets was rubbed down to bare metal. Somebody had wrapped the forestock in cloth tape, and the tape had been replaced so many times it had left a shadow in the wood. Somebody in the back whistled. Oh my God, Renick said, and he said it warmly, delighted, like a man opening a birthday present. It's real. It's actually real. Time. Sergeant, Emily said. He took it out of her hands. That was the moment, not the words. The taking. He lifted it over his head and turned in a slow circle so everybody could see. Marines, our new sniper has arrived, and she has brought us a rifle that fought at Iwo Jima. They laughed. God help them. They laughed, 40 of them, because it was hot and they were bored, and Renick was funny and she was a stranger. No, hold on, he said. I want to be fair. I want to be respectful. Ma'am, what's the effective range on this thing? Emily's voice didn't rise. Give it back, Sergeant. I'm asking a professional question. Give it back. Because the rumor going around is that you told somebody at Pendleton you could take a target at 3,000 meters. He looked around the yard, playing to it. 3,000. With that, Sergeant Renick. I've got a rifle in my rack that costs more than my truck, Renick said. 1,200 easy. 14 on a good day if the wind cooperates and God's in a decent mood. 3,000 meters isn't a shot, ma'am. 3,000 meters is a prayer. And then he opened his hand. The rifle hit the dirt. The sound it made was small. That was the awful part. It was just a small, flat sound, wood and metal on hardpack, and it landed on its side with the scope in the dust. The laughing stopped like somebody had cut a wire. Emily didn't move. She looked at the rifle on the ground, and her face did something that nobody in that yard could name. She didn't get angry. Angry would have been easier to watch. Her jaw locked and her throat worked once, and her eyes went somewhere very far from Arizona. And Lance Corporal Whitfield, standing near the fuel drums, would say later that it was the first time in his life he had ever seen a person look at an object the way you look at a body. Ma'am, Renick said, and some of the ease had gone out of him. I'm making a point. She crouched. She picked the rifle up. She turned it over in her hands, checked the bolt, checked the glass, checked the muzzle, brushed the dust off the receiver with 2 fingers, slowly the way you'd brush hair off somebody's forehead. Then she stood. You've made it, she said, and she walked away. Nobody laughed at her back. Not one man. 40 Marines watched her cross that yard, and not one of them made a sound, and Renick stood there in the middle of a joke that had stopped being funny and couldn't figure out why his chest felt tight. Boone came up beside him. That was ugly, Victor. I made a valid point. You dropped a captain's weapon in the dirt in front of the whole outpost. I proved it's junk. It's still in one piece, isn't it? You drop a real system like that, you're recalibrating for 2 days. Boone looked at him a long moment. You ever think about why she didn't yell? Because she knew I was right. No, Boone said. That wasn't a woman who knew she was wrong. That was a woman holding something in with both hands. She started walking. You'd better hope you're right, Victor. Because if you're not, you just did something you're going to be apologizing for the rest of your life. By 1400, the story had been told 11 times and gotten better with each one. By 1600, somebody had a photo. By 1800, the photo was on a phone screen in the chow hall with a caption underneath it, and Corporal Danny Ruiz was looking at it and not laughing. Ruiz was 23. He was the youngest man at Redstone with a combat action ribbon and the only one who never talked about how he got it. He had a way of going quiet in crowds, and he had been going quiet a lot since March. You seen this, said the kid holding the phone. Museum Barbie. Give me that. Come on, Ruiz, it's funny. Give me the phone. Something in his voice made the kid hand it over. Ruiz looked at the photo for a long time. The image was blurry, taken from the hip. But you could see her crouching in the dirt with both hands on that rifle, and you could see her face, and Ruiz had seen that exact expression once before in his life on a road outside Kandahar on a man kneeling next to a stretcher. Delete it, Ruiz said. What? I said delete it. Man, what is your problem? Ruiz put the phone on the table and walked out, and he didn't eat that night. Emily didn't come to chow. At 21:40, she was sitting on an ammunition crate behind the maintenance bay with the rifle across her knees and a cleaning kit open beside her, and she had been there for 2 hours. She wasn't cleaning it because it was dirty. She was cleaning it because her hands needed something to do. She ran the patch through, she checked it, she ran it through again, she checked it again, and somewhere around the 4th pass, her hands finally stopped shaking and she let out a breath she'd been holding since 11 in the morning. Ma'am, she didn't jump, she just turned her head. Ruiz stood at the corner of the bay with 2 paper cups of coffee. I brought you this. It's terrible. It's the only thing we've got. Thank you, Corporal. He handed one over and stood there not sure what to do with his hands. You can sit down, she said. He sat on the crate across from her. He looked at the rifle. He looked away. You want to ask, Emily said. No, ma'am. You do? Everybody wants to ask, ma'am. That's the problem. He turned the cup in his hands. That's why I'm not going to. Emily looked at him properly for the first time. There was something familiar in the way he sat forward, elbows on his knees, like a man who couldn't get comfortable in a chair anymore. How long have you been back? She asked. Ruiz's head came up fast. Ma'am, you didn't sit down until I told you to. You checked the corners on the way in. You're holding that cup with your left hand so your right stays free. She took a sip. So, how long? He was quiet for a while. 16 months, he said finally. Bad one. Yes, ma'am. How many? He looked at the ground. 3. Emily nodded slowly. She didn't say I'm sorry. She didn't say anything at all for almost a minute, and Ruiz realized with a kind of relief that almost buckled him that she wasn't going to. That's the part nobody tells you, she said at last. Everybody wants to know what it was like. Nobody wants to know what it's like now. Ruiz's eyes were wet, and he wiped them fast with the back of his wrist and pretended it was dust. Ma'am, permission to speak freely. Go ahead. What Renick did today was wrong. Renick did what he thought was his job. He dropped your rifle in the dirt. Yes, she said, he did. And you didn't say anything. Emily looked down at the weapon across her knees. She ran her thumb along the repair in the stock along that old seam where the wood had been split and pinned back together, and she did it without thinking the way a person touches a scar. Corporal, she said, if I had said what I wanted to say to that man this morning, I would not have stopped for a very long time. And when I did stop, I'd have been the story instead of the rifle. And then somebody would have taken this away from me and locked it in a case somewhere with a little card next to it. Her voice didn't rise, but it changed, went thin and hard as wire. That's not going to happen. Not while I'm alive. Ruiz looked at the rifle again. Ma'am, what is it? It's a rifle. That's not an answer. No, she agreed, it isn't. She stood and packed the kit and slung the weapon and paused. Ruiz. Ma'am, 3 is a lot, she said. You get to keep them, but you don't have to carry them alone out here, and anybody who tells you different has never carried any." She walked off into the dark, and Danny Ruiz sat on that crate for another 20 minutes, with a cold cup of coffee, feeling something loosen in his chest that had been knotted since March. At 22:55, Commander Nathan Cole was still awake, and he was staring at a personnel file that made no sense. He'd pulled it after the motor pool incident because two Marines had come to him about it separately, and because he'd been in this long enough to smell trouble before it caught fire. The file was 12 pages. 9 of them were normal. Carter Emily R., commissioned 2011, Scout Sniper Instructor. Qualifications, evaluations, marksmanship data that made his eyebrows climb. Then page 10. Page 10 was a deployment record with a 6-month gap in it, not blank, redacted. Black bar across the unit designation, black bar across the location, black bar across the operation name, and then a single line at the bottom in plain text that Cole read 4 times before he believed it. Survivor status confirmed. 1, he sat back in his chair. 1, not one of 12, not one of 6, just 1. He typed a query into the terminal for the operation reference number listed at the top of page 10. The system thought about it for 11 seconds. Access restricted. Inquiry logged. Cole stared at that. In 9 months at Redstone, he had never once triggered an access restriction. He had never even seen the screen it printed on. He picked up the phone. It rang 4 times at the other end in an office 2 time zones away at almost midnight. "Nathan," the voice on the other end sounded wide awake. That was the first thing that bothered him. "I've been expecting this call." "Sir, I just tried to pull a file and the system told me no." "I know, it flagged my desk about 90 seconds ago." Cole's stomach went cold. "Sir, what did you send me?" A pause, a long one. "Nathan, I need you to listen carefully, and I need you to not repeat any part of this conversation." "Yes, sir." "You didn't get assigned Captain Carter. Nobody at your level requested her. Nobody at my level requested her either." Another pause. "She was requested by name at a level that does not explain itself, and she was sent to your position specifically, and you were not read in because there was nothing we were able to tell you that would have helped." Cole stood up. He didn't know he was standing until he was. "Sir, with respect, that's not an answer. That's a shape of one. That's all I have. Is she in trouble?" "No." "Am I?" "Oh, silence, sir." "Nathan." And here the voice changed, dropped, went from official to something almost gentle. And that scared Cole more than anything else in the call. "In the last 6 days, 3 separate collection assets have picked up movement in the corridor 60 miles south of your position. Not smugglers, not migrants. Organized, equipment discipline, radio discipline, formation spacing that doesn't come from nowhere. Sir, I've had no intelligence brief on any of that." "I know. I've got 64 people out here." "I know that too." Cole's hand tightened on the phone. "Then why in God's name did you send me, one captain, instead of a company?" "Because a company takes 10 days to move and gets noticed on day 1, the voice said, "and because whoever is out there does not know she is with you." Cole didn't answer. He couldn't. "Nathan, whatever your Marines think of her, whatever they've said today, and I've already heard about today, you square that away. Fast." "Sir, what is she?" "She's the only person on the continent who has ever done the thing that might need doing," the voice said. "Once, Mom, in conditions no one has been able to reproduce since. And the after-action report on that operation is sealed for 50 years, and I have read the cover page, and the cover page alone kept me up for 2 nights. Sir, take care of her rifle, Nathan," the voice said. "It matters more than you think." And the line went dead. Cole stood in that shack for a long time with the receiver still in his hand. Then he set it down, walked to the door, opened it, and looked out at his outpost. 64 people asleep under a sky with too many stars in it. A perimeter he could walk in 9 minutes. 2 working vehicles. A radar that lied. And out past the wire somewhere in all that black, a captain sitting alone on an ammunition crate with a rifle across her knees that had already survived something nobody was allowed to talk about. At 0430, the radar lied again. That's what the operator said anyway. Corporal Whitfield had the watch and the screen bloomed with a return in the southern arc that held for 6 seconds and then broke apart into nothing. Ghost, he said out loud, mostly to himself. That's the humidity. It does that. He wrote it in the log because you write everything in the log. At 0447, it happened again. Same bearing, slightly closer. At 0501, he stopped calling it a ghost and called Commander Cole. Cole was in the shack in 4 minutes with his boots half-laced. He looked at the log, looked at the screen, looked at the bearing, and something in his face made Whitfield's mouth go dry. Sir, get me Staff Sergeant Boone. Get me Sergeant Renick. He paused. And get me Captain Carter. Sir, it's 0500. Whitfield. Moving, sir. Emily was already awake. She was standing outside the maintenance bay in the dark with a cup of that terrible coffee, and when Whitfield came running around the corner, she turned toward him before he made a sound. Ma'am, the commander wants you in the ops shack. Southern Arc, she said. Whitfield stopped dead. Ma'am, Southern Arc, she repeated. Intermittent return. 2 contacts about half an hour apart. Second one closer than the first. Whitfield's mouth opened and nothing came out. How, he said. Emily dumped the coffee out on the ground. Because that's what it always is, she said, and because I've been watching that arc since 2 in the morning. They walked to the shack together, and neither one said another word, and Whitfield would tell that story for the rest of his career, and nobody would ever quite believe him. Renick got there last. He came in still tucking his shirt, and he stopped just inside the door when he saw who was standing at the map table. Cole didn't give him a second to think about it. Sergeant, Captain Carter has the floor. Rennick's jaw flexed. Sir? Do you have a problem with that? No, sir. Say it like you mean it. The shack went very quiet. Boone looked at the floor. Whitfield looked at the ceiling. No, sir, Renick said. I don't have a problem. Good. Cole turned. Captain. Emily put 2 fingers on the map on a spot south and slightly east of the outpost, and she didn't look up. They're not coming straight at us, she said. They came in on this bearing at 0430, then they broke off. Then they came back on almost the same line 17 minutes later. That's not movement. That's measurement. Boone frowned and then, measurement of what, ma'am? Us. Emily traced a slow arc with her fingertip. They're finding the edge of our detection envelope. They want to know exactly how close they can sit before we see them. Renick made a small sound. Say it, Sergeant, Emily said, still not looking up. Ma'am, with respect, that's a lot of conclusion off 2 radar hits on a system that flags birds. It is. So you could be wrong. I could be. She raised her head then and she looked right at him, and for the first time since she arrived, there was nothing quiet in her face at all. And if I'm wrong, Wes, we lose an hour of sleep. And if you're right and I'm wrong, you get to tell everybody about it for a year and I'll let you. Rennick's ears went red. But if I'm right, Emily said, then there are people out there right now with a rangefinder and a notebook figuring out exactly how far away they can stand and still kill us. And they will pick a distance we can't answer. That's the entire point of measuring. Nobody moved. Cole cleared his throat. How far, Captain? Emily looked back down at the map. She was quiet for a moment. Farther than anything on this base can reach, she said. And Sergeant Victor Renick, who had dropped her rifle in the dirt 18 hours earlier, in front of 40 laughing men, felt the floor of his stomach drop out from under him because he suddenly understood exactly what she had brought to Arizona and exactly why they'd sent her. The drone went up at 0538, and for 11 minutes it showed them nothing but empty ground, and Sergeant Victor Renick let himself believe he was going to win the argument. Nothing, he said. Sir, there's nothing out there. Sand and rock and more sand. Keep flying it, Cole said. Sir, we've got 4 hours of battery a day on that bird, and we're burning it chasing a radar ghost. Keep flying it, Sergeant. At 0549, the feed passed over a dry wash 61 miles south of the wire, and Corporal Whitfield, who was driving the bird, said one word, Sir. Nobody answered him because everybody was already looking. There were vehicles in that wash, not parked, staged, nose out spaced 20 meters apart, netting over the roofs that broke the shape of them so well that the first pass had gone right over the top without a flicker. Somebody had walked that ground and chosen it. Count them, Cole said. 6, sir. No, 8. There's 2 more under the lip on the east side. Personnel. I can't tell, sir, they're not moving. That's not true, Emily said. Every head in the shack turned. They're not moving because they know the pass schedule, she said. Take it up 200 feet in orbit wide. Don't fly over them again. Give it 4 minutes. Ma'am, if I go wide, I lose resolution. Do it anyway. Whitfield looked at Cole. Cole nodded once. 4 minutes later at 0556, the wash filled with people. They came out from under the netting and out of the shadow of the cut bank, and they moved with a calm that turned Renick's mouth to paper. Nobody hurried. Nobody bunched up. 2 men walked a perimeter that had clearly been walked 100 times before. Somebody stood by a vehicle and pointed, and 4 men went where he pointed, without a word of argument. Boone counted out loud and lost track twice. 30, she said. 35. Sir, that's a platoon. That's a real platoon. That's not migrants, Whitfield said, and his voice cracked on the last word. No, Emily said, it isn't. Cole put both hands flat on the map table. Captain, talk. They came out because the bird went wide, she said. They know the difference between a drone looking at them and a drone looking past them. That means somebody down there has flown one or been hunted by one or both. Meaning what, eh? Meaning we are not the first outpost they have studied. At 0604, the feed went to static, and Whitfield swore and slapped the console. Battery, Cole asked him. No, sir, I've got 60%. Then what? Whitfield's hands were shaking on the sticks. Sir, I don't know. I've got no telemetry. I've got nothing. It's just gone. The room was silent for 4 full seconds. They killed it, Emily said. Ma'am, drones fail out here all the time. The heat gets in the Whitfield. She said his name gently, and that was somehow worse. What was your last altitude? 1,900 feet, ma'am. And what was your last heading? He looked at the frozen screen. Away from them, ma'am. Then it wasn't the heat. Renick made a sound in his throat. You're saying they shot down a drone at 1,900 feet. I'm saying it stopped existing while it was flying away from them, Emily said. You can call that whatever you want. Cole straightened up. Boone, full stand to right now. Every weapon, every position, ammunition counts on my desk in 30 minutes. Renick, I want the southern sector walked, and I want every range card in this outpost rechecked personally. Sir. Renick hesitated at the door. Sir, permission to say something. Make it fast. If that's 35 men with that kind of discipline, and we've got 64 bodies but only about 40 who've ever done this for real, then, sir, we don't have a range problem. We have a manpower problem, and we need to be calling somebody right now. I've been calling since 0510, Cole said. Renick blinked. And Cole didn't answer him. He looked at the far wall for a second too long. Sir, and walk your sector sergeant. At 0641, Staff Sergeant Alicia Boone caught Cole alone outside the shack and asked him the same question in a different way. Nathan, she'd known him 11 years. She used his name maybe twice a year and only when it counted. What did Hire say? Hire said a lot of words. Give me one of them. Stand by. Boone's face did something complicated. Stand by. That's the word. For how long? They didn't say. Air, not tasked. Reaction force, not tasked. Nathan, we are 64 people in a fence. I'm aware of the count, Alicia. She stepped closer and dropped her voice. Then let me ask the ugly one. Are we being left out here? Cole was quiet a moment too long. They know we're here, he said finally. That's not what I asked. It's the answer I've got. Boone laughed once with no humor in it at all. God almighty, that's exactly what she said to you yesterday, isn't it? Word for word. Cole looked at her sharply. Yeah, Boone said. Whitfield told me, everybody's telling everybody everything today, sir. That's what happens. She turned to go, then stopped. One more thing. What do I tell my Marines? Tell them the truth. Which part? The part where there's 35 of them and they've been watching us longer than we've been watching them, Cole said. They can handle that. What they can't handle is finding out later that I knew and didn't say. At 7:55, Emily Carter walked the southern wire alone with a rangefinder and a notebook. And Danny Ruiz found her out there 20 minutes later doing something he didn't understand. She was standing on the berm, taking a reading, writing it down, walking 40 paces, taking another reading, writing that down. Ma'am, ma'am. Corporal, what are you doing? The same thing they were doing at 4:30 this morning. Ruiz frowned. Measuring. Measuring. She lowered the rangefinder. They found the edge of what we can see. Now I'm finding the edge of what we can hit. Those are two different circles, and the space between them is where they're going to stand. Ruiz looked out at all that flat brown nothing. How big is the space? That's what I'm finding out. He watched her walk another 40 paces and take another reading, and something about the patience of it made his chest hurt. Ma'am, can I ask you a real question? You keep asking permission to ask things. That's because everybody else out here just asks. Emily almost smiled. Go ahead, Ruiz. Are we going to be okay? She lowered the rangefinder and turned around and looked at him, and she did not do the thing that every officer he had ever known would have done. She didn't say, of course. She didn't say, we're Marines. She didn't say anything comfortable at all. I don't know yet, she said. Ruiz nodded slowly. His throat was tight. Thank you, ma'am. For what? For not lying to me. Corporal Emily said, I have been lied to by people who thought they were being kind. It doesn't feel kind on the other end. It feels like being handled. She raised the rangefinder again. You'll get the truth from me. It might not be good. It'll be true. At 09:12, Commander Nathan Cole sat down at a terminal that had told him no 11 hours earlier and tried again. He didn't expect it to work. He typed the operation reference off page 10 of Emily Carter's file, hit enter, and sat back to wait for the same red screen. It didn't come. The terminal thought about it for 19 seconds. Then it opened one document. 2 pages, most of it black, and at the top a line that said, Released Understanding Exception, Imminent Operational Necessity. Somebody somewhere had decided he needed to know something. Cole read the 2 pages 3 times. Then he stood up, walked outside, and threw up behind the generator shed. Boone found him there 90 seconds later. Sir, I'm fine. You're not fine, you're gray. Cole wiped his mouth with the back of his hand. Alicia, how many people at this outpost know how to keep their mouth shut? Counting me. Counting you. 2, Boone said. Maybe 3 if Ruiz counts, and he does. Then it's 3. He straightened up. Not Renick. Sir, he's your section leader. Not yet, Cole said. Right, not until I understand what I just read. At 10:30, the satellite uplink dropped, and it did not come back. Whitfield worked it for an hour. He reseated every cable in the shack. He swapped the modem. He rebooted the whole stack twice and stood there watching a green light refuse to turn green. Sir, the dish is fine, the cabling's fine, the gear is fine. Then why don't I have a link? Because there's nothing there, sir. It's like somebody put a hand over it. Cole's voice was very level. Say that again, Corporal. Whitfield swallowed. It's like somebody sitting on the band, sir. At 11:04, the HF radio started working badly, not failing. Working badly, which was worse because it meant you kept trying. Boone got 4 words through to the district net and lost the rest. She tried again 11 minutes later and got a wall of noise that made her pull the headset off her ear. Sir, she said, somebody is standing on our frequencies. How sure are you? Sure enough that I'm not going to just say it any softer. Renick came in on the tail end of that, and he had a folded range card in his hand and dust to his knees, and he had been thinking hard for 4 hours. Sir, Southern Sector's rechecked, and I want to put something on the table. Go. Our longest reliable engagement with our best shooter with our best system in good conditions is about 1,200 meters, optimistically 14. He put the card down. I walked every position. I ran every number. 1,200 is real. Everything past that is us telling ourselves a story. Understood. Sir, that's not the part I want on the table. Renick looked at the map. The part I want on the table is that if they've been measuring us since before yesterday, they already know that number. They probably know it better than I do. Cole nodded slowly. Keep going. So they're not going to come to 1,200. Why would they? They'll sit at 2,000 or 2.5, and they'll put fire on us all day with something crew served, and we will die a piece at a time without ever seeing a man. Rennick's jaw worked. And we'll have nothing to answer with. Nothing. Not one thing on this base reaches them. The room was very quiet. There's one thing, Boone said. Rennick's head came up fast. Don't, he said. Victor, don't say it. Somebody's going to say it. It's a wooden rifle, Boone. His voice cracked. It's a wooden rifle with a scope on it from before I was born, and you want to hang 64 lives on it, and I am telling you, as somebody who has done this work with both hands, 3,000 meters is not a thing people do. It's a thing people tell stories about. Sergeant, Cole said. Sir, with respect. Sergeant Renick. Cole's voice went flat. You want to know what I read this morning? Renick stopped. I read 2 pages, Cole said. Most of it was blacked out. The part that wasn't blacked out was a range figure and a date, and next to the range figure, there was a note from an ordnance officer who did not believe what he was writing down, and you could hear it in the words. Nobody breathed. What was the figure, sir? Boone asked. Cole looked at the door at the yard beyond it at nothing. I'm not going to say it in here, he said, because if I say it in here, it'll be in the chow hall in 20 minutes, and I need 48 hours before that happens. Rennick's face had lost all its color. Sir, are you telling me she actually... I'm telling you, Cole said, that when you dropped that woman's rifle in the dirt yesterday, you did something I don't think you understand yet, and I'd start understanding it fast. At 12:47 in the chow hall, somebody said the wrong thing to the wrong Marine. It was the kid with the phone. He'd deleted the photo, but he hadn't stopped talking, and he was 2 sentences into a joke about Museum Barbie and the Great Wooden Hope when Danny Ruiz stood up so fast his chair went over backward. Say it again. Ruiz, man, chill. Say it again, loud, so everybody hears it. The chow hall went dead quiet. Come on, the kid said, but his voice had gone thin. It's a joke. There's 35 people 60 miles south of us who know exactly how far our guns shoot, Ruiz said. They killed our drone at 1,900 feet this morning. They're sitting on our satellite. They're sitting on our radios. And you're in here making jokes about the one person on this base who saw them coming before anybody else did. Ruiz. She called it, Ruiz said, at 5 in the morning, before Whitfield even opened his mouth. She called the bearing, and she called the timing, and she called what they were doing out there, and she was right about all of it. Where were you at 5 in the morning? Nobody said a word. Ruiz picked up his chair and sat back down and didn't eat. 20 feet away, at the end of the last table, Sergeant Victor Renick had heard every word, and he set down his fork very carefully and stared at his hands for a long time. At 14:20, Renick found her behind the maintenance bay. She was doing the same thing she'd been doing the night before, sitting on an ammunition crate with the rifle across her knees and a patch in her hand, and he stood at the corner of the building for a full minute before she said anything. You can come around the corner, Sergeant. You've been standing there a while. He came around the corner. How'd you know? Your boots. Renick stopped a few feet away. He didn't sit. He didn't know what to do with his hands. Ma'am, I came to say something, and I'm going to say it badly. Most people do. What I did yesterday was out of line. Emily kept working the patch. It was. I'm not going to stand here and tell you I didn't mean it because I did. He forced it out. I meant every word. That's the part that's going to sit on me. It wasn't a joke I lost control of. I planned it. I had it in my head at breakfast. She looked up then. Why, ma'am, you're a section leader with 11 months at this outpost and 3 deployments behind you. You had a whole morning to think about it, and what you decided to do was drop a stranger's weapon in the dirt in front of 40 people. Emily set the patch down. So why? Rennick's throat worked. Because they were going to look at you, he said. Say that again. They were going to look at you. His voice was rough. Ma'am, I have been the guy out here for 11 months. When something goes wrong, they come to me. When the new kids are scared at night, they come to me. That's not vanity. That's just what it is. And I've been doing it on about 4 hours of sleep a night since March, and then a captain shows up with an instructor's paperwork and a legend attached to her. And I knew within about 10 seconds that from that morning on, they were going to look at you first. He stopped breathing hard. So I got out in front of it, he said. That's all it was. That's the whole ugly little thing. Emily was quiet. How long have you not been sleeping? She asked. Renick laughed cracked and awful. That's what you took from that. How long? Since March. What happened in March? Nothing happened in March. He said it too fast. Ma'am, I came here to apologize, not to... Ruiz stopped sleeping in March too, Emily said. Rennick's face went blank. Sergeant, she said, sit down. He sat down. He didn't decide to. His legs just did it. We lost a truck, he said after a while. Not out here, different rotation, different country, doesn't matter. Ruiz was in the second vehicle, I was in the fourth. I told them to push through the wash instead of holding for the sweep because we were 40 minutes behind and I was tired of being late. He was looking at the ground. 3 men. Ruiz pulled 2 of them out. I got there in time to help with the third one, and there was nothing to help with. Emily didn't say anything. So yeah, Renick said, that's why I'm the loudest man on this base, because when I'm loud, nobody asks me anything. The silence stretched out. Sergeant, Emily said at last, do you want to know why I didn't say anything to you yesterday? Because I wasn't worth it. No. But she turned the rifle a few degrees so the light caught the repair in the stock, that long pinned seam in the walnut. Because I looked at you and I recognized you. Renick's head came up. You were the loudest man in the room, Emily said. I was the loudest woman in a room one time for about 6 months, a long way from here. Different noise, same reason. Her thumb moved along the seam without her seeming to notice. It stops working eventually. It stopped working for me on a Tuesday. What happened on the Tuesday? Emily was quiet for a long moment. Everyone I was with died, she said. Renick did not move. How many, Sergeant? Ma'am, how many? 11, she said. And me. He put his hand over his mouth. That's the rifle, he said. It wasn't a question. That's the rifle. Ma'am, I dropped it in the dirt. I know. I dropped it in the... His voice broke completely. Oh God, ma'am, I'm sorry. Sergeant, I'm so sorry. Victor. She said his first name and it stopped him cold. Look at me. If I needed you to hurt for it, I'd have let you hurt for it. I don't need that. I need you sharp and I need you loud. And I need every man on this base doing exactly what you tell them without a half second of hesitation, because in about 2 days, that half second is going to be the whole difference. She picked up the patch again. So you're going to go be the loudest man on this base. And when this is over, if we're both still standing, you can buy me a cup of coffee that doesn't taste like a sock. Renick laughed, and it came out mostly as a sob. Yes, ma'am. He got up. He got as far as the corner. Sergeant? Ma'am. The wash, she said, and the one you pushed through in March. What about it? You were 40 minutes behind, so you pushed. Emily didn't look up. 60 miles south of us, there's a platoon sitting in a dry wash under netting, and they have been out there for at least 6 days, and they are not in a hurry about any part of it. Renick stood very still. What are you saying, ma'am? I'm saying whoever is running that unit has never once in his life been 40 minutes behind and pushed anyway, Emily said. That's the man we're dealing with. Go tell the commander I said so. At 16:15, the outpost lost its second drone. They'd sent the spare up on a short leg, low and slow, nowhere near the wash, just to look at the ground between. It flew 11 minutes. At the 12th minute, the feed jumped once and then held perfectly steady on an image that Whitfield stared at for 4 seconds before he understood it. The bird was showing them a stretch of empty desert. The bird had been over ridgeline. Sir, he said, and his voice had gone strange. Sir, I think I'm looking at a recording. Cole came over the top of the table to get to that screen. Explain. The image isn't changing, sir. The bird's still flying. My telemetry says I'm doing 90 feet a second, and the picture isn't changing. He toggled something. Nothing happened. Sir, somebody's feeding me a picture. Can you break it? I can't even find it. Bring it home. Sir, I don't know where home is on that bird right now. I'm flying a heading I can't verify. Boone said very quietly. So they've got our satellite, our radios, and now our eyes. They've had our eyes since this morning, Emily said from the doorway. This is just the first time they wanted us to know. Everyone turned. Ma'am, they killed the first one clean so we'd think it was a malfunction. She came to the table. This one they left flying and handed us a lie. That's not a capability problem. That's a message. Cole's jaw was tight. What's the message? That we can't see them, we can't hear anybody, and nobody can hear us, Emily said. And that they'd like us to sit with that for a while. At 1849, Commander Cole assembled every Marine at Outpost Redstone in the motor pool in the exact spot where a rifle had hit the dirt 32 hours earlier and told them the truth. He told them about the wash and the netting and the count. He told them about the 2 drones. He told them about the satellite and the radios. He told them the word standby, and he told them he had not been able to reach anyone since 10:30 that morning, and he watched 63 faces process that in real time. Somebody in the back said, "Sir, when's the relief coming?" "I don't know." "Sir, is it coming?" "I don't know that either," Cole said. "What I know is that I've got 64 Marines, a good perimeter, plenty of ammunition, and about a week of water. And I know that whoever is out there is very good and very patient and has done this before." He let that land. "And I know one more thing," he said. "Yesterday morning, some of you laughed at a captain in this exact spot. I want every one of you to think hard about that, because that captain is the only reason we knew they were out there 12 hours before they wanted us to." Nobody said a word. "Captain Carter," Emily stepped forward. "Tell them what you told me." She looked out at 63 faces, most of which had laughed at her, and she didn't make them wait for it. "They're going to stand somewhere we can't reach," she said. "That's the whole plan. There's no clever part coming. They'll set up past everything you carry, and they'll take this outpost apart over about 6 hours, and you will never see a target the entire time." A voice from the middle, "Ma'am, how far past?" "Between 2,000 and 3,000 meters." "Ma'am, that's not—" The kid stopped himself. "Nothing we've got goes there." "No," Emily said, "it doesn't." And then Sergeant Victor Renick stepped out of the front rank, turned around and faced 63 Marines with his back to her. "Hey," he said loud the way he did everything. "Yesterday I dropped the captain's weapon in the dirt and made a joke about it, and most of you laughed, including me, and I was the loudest one." His voice carried across the whole yard. "I was wrong. I was flat wrong, and I was wrong on purpose. And I'm saying it out here because that's where I said the other thing." Whitfield's mouth was open. Boone had gone completely still. "That rifle is not a joke," Renick said. "That rifle reaches where nothing else on this base reaches. And when the time comes, I'm going to be standing next to it, and every single one of you is going to do exactly what she says, exactly when she says it, and nobody is going to make a sound." He turned around and looked at Emily. "Ma'am," he said, "the base is yours." At 23:17 that night, Corporal Whitfield was on watch when the western horizon lit up. It wasn't a flash. It was a slow orange glow that swelled and held and faded over about 90 seconds, 40 miles out in a direction with nothing in it. He called Cole. Cole called Emily. The three of them stood at the wire and watched it die down to nothing. "Sir," Whitfield said. "What's out that way at nothing?" Cole said. "Empty ground for 60 miles. "Then what burned?" Nobody answered. At 0206, Boone got 8 seconds of clear signal on the HF, the first clean audio in 15 hours, and it wasn't the district net. It was a man's voice, calm, unhurried, speaking English with the faintest accent, and he said one sentence before the noise came back down over him like a lid. "Good evening, Redstone. We know the captain is with you." Boone tore the headset off and sat there staring at the radio with both hands flat on the table. Then she got up and went to find Commander Cole, and she was running. Cole was awake before she got to the door because Boone running was a sound he'd learned to recognize in 11 years, and it had never once meant anything good. "Say it. Somebody just talked to us on the HF. "Higher." "No, sir." "Then who?" "Him," Boone said. "The man in the wash. Sir, I got 8 seconds of clean air, and it wasn't the district net, and it wasn't a relay. It was a voice, and he said, 'Good evening, Redstone. We know the captain is with you.'" Cole stood there in a t-shirt with his boots unlaced and did not move for 4 seconds. "Get her." "Sir, she's already coming. She heard me running." Emily came through the door with the rifle over her shoulder because she never went anywhere without it, and she looked at Boone's face and didn't need the story. "What did he say?" Boone repeated it word for word. Emily set the rifle against the wall very carefully, which was the first sign because she never set it against anything. "Say the words again," she said. "Exactly. Not the meaning, the words." "Good evening, Redstone. We know the captain is with you." He said the captain. "Yes, ma'am." "Not a captain. Not your captain. The captain." Boone's mouth opened. "Ma'am, I don't—" "It matters," Emily said, and something had gone out of her voice some floor underneath it. "It matters more than anything else in this room." Cole watched her. "Captain, what is it?" "Sir, he isn't guessing," Emily said. "You don't say the captain about somebody you found out about yesterday. You say it about somebody you've been saying it about for years." At 0223, Cole sent every man off the wire except the standing watch, and put 4 people in the operations shack with the door shut, and those 4 were Boone Renick, Ruiz, and Emily Carter. He'd said not Renick 36 hours earlier. He'd been wrong about that too. Everything I know, Cole said, you're about to know. Nobody carries it out that door. Sir, Renick said, 2 mornings ago, the system let me open 2 pages out of a file that's sealed for 50 years. Most of it was black. What wasn't black was a date, a range figure, and 1 ordnance note. Sir, the range figure, Boone said. 2,941 meters, Cole said. Nobody said anything. Renick's chair creaked. Sir, say the number 1 more time. 2,941. That's not... Renick stopped and started again, and his voice came out wrong. Sir, the confirmed record in the entire world is not much past that, and it was done with a system that cost more than this outpost off a stable platform, with a spotter with a computer. I know. And the note? Cole looked at Emily, and Emily looked at the table, and Cole read it out of memory. Weapon recovered. Not serviceable to standard. Optic damaged. Shooter reported 1 round expended. Recommend confirmation by other means, as this office cannot account for the result. He paused. Then somebody wrote 3 words in pen at the bottom. Confirmed by drone. Ruiz let out a breath that shook. Ma'am, Renick said, is it true? Yes. You made a shot at 2,941 meters. Yes. With that rifle, with that optic damaged. The optic broke in the way up the hill, Emily said. It broke because I fell, because I was carrying a man who was already dead, and I wouldn't put him down, and I went off a ledge in the dark. So yes, damaged. Nobody breathed. Ma'am, Ruiz said, why did you carry him if he was already? Because I'd promised him I wouldn't leave him, Emily said. That's all. There's nothing more to it than that. People think there's always more to it. Cole leaned forward. Captain, that was 11 men and you. Who were the 11? Sir, I can't. Captain. Sir, I physically cannot, Emily said. I signed something. I've kept it 9 years, and I've kept it in rooms harder than this one. There's a man 60 miles south of us who says he knows you, Cole said. There are 64 people asleep behind that door. I'm not asking you to break the seal on the operation. I'm asking you where I question, and you can answer it yes or no. He waited. Is the man out there connected to the day you lost those 11 men? Emily was quiet for a very long time. Sir, she said, I don't know, and that is the honest and complete answer, and it is the thing that has been eating me alive since Corporal Whitfield first said the word ghost. At 03:04, Renick asked the question nobody else would. Ma'am, how did they know you were coming here? Emily didn't answer. Because I've been sitting here doing math, Renick said. You got orders you couldn't explain. Nobody at this level asked for yo. The commander gets told standby by people who won't say a word about a platoon sitting 60 miles out. And then a man on our own frequency says the captain like she's a name he's said 1,000 times. He put both hands flat on the table. Ma'am, either they got very lucky or somebody told them. Boone said, Victor. No, she knows. Look at her. She's known since 2 in the morning. Emily looked up. Sergeant, she said, there are 4 people in this room, and they would like all 4 of you to hear me say this once, and then I would like nobody to say it again until this is finished. If somebody put me here on purpose and put them here on purpose, then this outpost is not a target, it's a table. And every one of you is sitting at it because I sat down. Ruiz said, ma'am, that's not on you. It's not about whose fault it is, Emily said. It's about what it changes. And it changes exactly one thing. She stood up. It means they are not going to leave. Not tonight, not tomorrow, not if we hurt them. Men who came for a base can be discouraged. Men who came for a person don't go home. At 0431, the first mortar round landed inside the wire. It came in from the south and it hit 40 meters short of the maintenance bay, and it was the loudest thing any of them had ever heard because the desert had been silent for 2 days, and the silence had made them believe things. Renick was on his feet and moving before the dirt came down. Up, everybody. Up, positions. Positions, positions, Boone Southern Arc. I want a count of tubes. Whitfield, get off that screen. Get in the bunker. Move. The second round hit at 0433. The third out at 0436. Then nothing for 11 minutes. Then 2 more. Sir, Boone said into the shack out of breath. They're not walking it in. They're not adjusting. 3 impacts inside the wire, 2 outside, no pattern. Are they blind? No, sir. I think they're bored. Cole stared at her. Say that again. Sir, if I wanted this base, I'd put 12 rounds on it in 90 seconds and come through the wire behind them. This is somebody dropping around every few minutes to keep 64 people standing up all night. Boone wiped her face. They're not attacking us. They're keeping us awake. At 5:25, Emily Carter was lying on the roof of the operations shack with the rifle beside her, not looking through the scope, just looking, and Cole climbed up with a cup of coffee and sat down where she told him to sit. Talk to me, Captain. They fired 5 rounds and gave away nothing, Emily said. Every impact was from a different displacement. They're moving a single tube around and firing it once. Why poem? So I can't find it. Cole absorbed that. You, not us, you. Sir, I have been on this roof since the first round, and I have not seen one flash, she said. Not one. That's not luck. That's a crew who has been told that somewhere on this base, there is a person who only needs to see them once, so they respect you. No, sir. Emily finally turned her head. They're managing me. There's a difference, and the difference is going to kill somebody today. At 6:11, the harassment stopped, and at 6:40, the real thing started, and it started exactly the way she said it would. It came from 2,200 meters. Heavy machine gun fire sustained methodical from a position they could not see and could not reach. And the first burst walked across the northern generator and killed it, and the second burst walked across the water bladders. Water, somebody screamed. They're hitting the water. Leave it. Leave it. Renick on the berm standing up where nobody should stand up. Nobody runs for the water. You get to a hole and you stay in it. Ruiz got to him and pulled him down by the belt. Sergeant, get down. They're aiming at the water, Ruiz. I know. They're not trying to break the wire. They're taking our days away. I know, Sergeant, now. Get down. At 07:03, Corporal Whitfield started crying in the bunker quietly with his fist in his mouth, and Boone sat down next to him and did not tell him to stop. How long can they do this, Staff Sergeant? As long as they want. That's not helping, ma'am. You didn't ask for help, you asked a question, Boone said. You want help? Here's help. I've been shot at for 11 years. It always feels like it's never going to stop. It always stops. What if it doesn't this time? Boone put her hand on the back of his neck. Then it stops anyway, she said. Just differently. Now wipe your face and go tell the commander the northern generator's gone, because you're the one who knows the numbers on it. At 07:48, they took their first casualty. A private named Ellery took a fragment through the thigh when a round hit the vehicle he was crouched behind, and he made a sound that everyone on that side of the base heard, and 4 Marines went out for him without being told. Renick got there first and dragged him back by the drag handle with rounds hitting the dirt in a line behind them, and when they got him inside the wall, the corpsman had his hands in the wound in under 10 seconds. Talk to me, Doc. Femoral's intact. He's lucky. He doesn't sound lucky. Sergeant, he's 20 years old and he's got a hole in him. Lucky's a comparison, not a feeling. Ellery grabbed Renick's sleeve. Sergeant, I'm here. Are we getting out? Renick looked at that kid's face, and for 1 second, everybody watching saw him decide something. We're not getting out, he said. We're getting through. That's a different thing, and it's a better thing. You hold on to that. At 09:02, Emily came down off the roof for the first time in 5 hours, and she went straight to Cole, and everyone in the shack saw her face and got very quiet. I found the gun, she said. Cole came out of his chair. Where? 2,230 meters. South-southeast on the low-rise. They've been firing off a spoil pile. Can you take it? Yes, then take it. No, sir. Cole stopped. Say that again, Captain. I said no. You just told me you can hit it. I can hit it, Emily said. And the second I do, they will know exactly where I am and exactly how far I reach, and everything after that will be built around not standing there. She held his eyes. Sir, right now they are guessing about me. That's the only real asset this base has. The moment I fire, it's gone forever, and I get to spend it once. Renick at the door, covered in dust with a private's blood on both his forearms, said, Ma'am, they're going to kill somebody with that gun. I know. They already put a hole in a 20-year-old. I know, Sergeant. Ma'am, with respect, how many? His voice was rising. How many do we spend before you spend the round? Emily didn't flinch. As many as it takes to only have to fire once, she said. Rennick stared at her. Then he laughed short and awful and rubbed his face with the back of his wrist. God, he said, you're the coldest person I've ever met, and I think you might be the only one of us doing this right. At 10:44, they got the second voice on the HF. Boone had left the set open and the noise had been sitting on it all morning, and then the noise moved aside like a curtain, and the man was there again, calm, unhurried. Redstone, your northern generator is out. You have lost most of your water. You have one wounded. This is not necessary. Cole took the handset. This is the commander of this position. Identify yourself. You have a captain. Say again. You have a captain. She is not assigned to you. She was placed with you. A pause and then something almost apologetic. Commander, I have no argument with your Marines. You have 63 people who did nothing but receive orders. Send her out to the road at the 11-kilometer marker, and I will be gone before dark, and your generator will be the worst thing that happened to you. Cole looked around the shack. Boone's face was white. Ruiz had both hands on the edge of the table. Renick was standing very still in the doorway. Emily was watching the radio and not the people, and she looked like someone hearing a song she hadn't heard since she was young. Cole keyed the handset. That's not going to happen. Commander, you want to know what I've got out here? Cole said. I've got a Marine bleeding into a cot. I've got no water. I've got no comms. I've got no relief, and I've got 64 people. 64. And that number has not changed since Tuesday, and it is not going to change today. Redstone out. He set the handset down. His hand was shaking. Nobody said anything for a long moment. Then Renick said very quietly, Sir, that was the best thing I've ever heard a man say. It might get us all killed. Yes, sir, Renick said. It was still the best thing I've ever heard a man say. At 11:12, Emily Carter walked out of the shack, and Ruiz followed her and caught her by the maintenance bay. Ma'am, don't. Ma'am, you were going to do it. Emily stopped walking. For about 2 seconds, she said, Ma'am. Corporal, I have had a lot of days in my life, and I would trade almost all of them, she said. And for 2 seconds, I stood in that room and thought about a road at the 11-kilometer marker, and it felt like somebody offered me a chair after 9 years of standing up. Ruiz's eyes were wet. But you didn't. No? Why not? Emily turned around. Because he lied, she said. There is no version of that man where he lets 63 witnesses walk away. He said it because he wanted us arguing with each other instead of finding his gun. She started walking again. That's the third time in 2 days he's tried to move my hands for me. He's very good at it. He's better at it than anybody I've ever worked against. Ruiz caught up. Ma'am, that word, against. Emily didn't answer. Ma'am, you said worked against, not fought against. Go check on Ellery Corporal. Ma'am, go check on Ellery. At 13:39, Sergeant Victor Renick lost a man. His name was Corporal Aaron Vance. He was 25. He had a wife in Yuma and a boy who was 14 months old, and he was moving ammunition between two positions when a burst caught him in the open. Renick got to him in 9 seconds. It didn't matter. It had already not mattered before Renick started running. He carried him in himself. He wouldn't let anybody take the other end. At 13:52, he came into the operations shack and put both hands on the map table and stood there with his head down, and nobody spoke, and after a while he said one word. Ma'am. Emily was already looking at him. I'm not going to ask you to fire, Renick said. I want you to know that. I know what you told me this morning, and I know you were right, and I'm not going to be the guy who makes you spend it because I'm hurting. Sergeant, but I need you to look me in the eye, he said, and tell me you're going to try to make it count. Come here. He came around the table. She turned her notebook toward him. It was covered front and back in numbers and wind calls taken every 20 minutes since dawn, in ranges walked off on foot, in temperatures and pressures, in a column of figures he didn't recognize at all. That's the gun that killed Vance, she said, pointing. That's the second gun on the eastern shoulder that's been quiet all day because they're saving it. That's a mortar displacement pattern with 6 positions in it. And that, she said, and her finger stopped on a set of figures circled twice, is a piece of ground at 2,960 meters, That is the only place on this entire horizon where a man can stand, see this whole outpost, and control both of those guns at once. Renick stared at the page. Ma'am, 2,960 is farther than 19 meters farther, Emily said. Yes. Is he there? Not yet. How do you know he'll come? Emily closed the notebook. Because he wants to watch, she said. At 1547, the eastern gun opened up the one that had been quiet all day, and it opened up on the observation tower. The tower was the tallest thing at Redstone, and it had been empty since 0500, because Emily had ordered it empty, and Cole had backed her without knowing why, and now they knew why. 400 rounds went into that tower in 90 seconds. The upper platform came apart. The ladder took a burst at the halfway point and folded. Boone, flat behind the berm, screamed, "Was anybody up there? Was anybody up there?" Nobody, Renick from 40 meters away. Nobody, she cleared it this morning. Boone put her forehead in the dirt and laughed, and it sounded like crying. At 16:04, Cole found Emily standing in the open looking at the wrecking tower, and he grabbed her by the arm and hauled her behind a vehicle. "What in God's name are you doing?" "Thinking, sir." "Think behind cover." "Sir, they just spent 400 rounds in their second gun on an empty structure," Emily said. "Do you understand what that means?" "That they're thorough. That they're worried." She was almost smiling, and it was the worst thing Cole had ever seen on her face. "Sir, he thinks I need height. He's been sitting out there for 2 days thinking about the one thing that could ruin his afternoon, and he decided it was the tower, and he took the tower." "Captain, he gave me something," she said. "He didn't mean to. He never has before." Cole's stomach turned over. "Before," he said. Emily's face closed like a door. "Sir, we should get behind the vehicle properly." "Captain Carter." "Sir, you said before." Emily looked at the ground for a long moment. "His name is Alexei Marchand," she said. 9 years ago, he was the man who told us the valley was clear." Cole didn't move. "He was ours. He was contracted. He was a liaison. He walked into our operations tent every morning for 3 weeks and drank our coffee and told us where the ground was safe," Emily said. "And on the Tuesday, he told us the eastern slope was empty, and it was not empty, and 11 men found that out over about 4 minutes." "Captain, the shot at 2,941 was not a lucky shot, sir," she said. "It was the man who put a radio down and walked away from the slope while my friends were dying on it, and he was 3 kilometers out, and he thought he was finished, and he was 100% correct that nothing in that valley could reach him." Cole could barely speak. "You hit him." "Hit?" "I hit him," Emily said. "I put a round through his chest at 2,941 meters, and I watched him go down through a cracked scope, and I have believed for 9 years that I killed him." And now, Emily turned and looked south at all that empty ground. "Now a man on my own radio frequency says, the captain like it's a word he's been chewing on for 9 years, she said. "So I think I was wrong, sir. And I think he has spent every day since then getting ready to be at a distance I cannot reach on a piece of ground I cannot see, watching me lose people one at a time." At 1811, the enemy stopped firing entirely, and the silence that came down on Outpost Redstone was worse than any of it. At 1830, Emily Carter climbed the wreckage of the observation tower. The ladder was gone at the midpoint, so she went up the outside of the frame with the rifle across her back, hand over hand, 30 feet of twisted steel, and every Marine who could see her stopped what they were doing and watched. Ruiz started up after her. Renick caught him. "Sergeant, she needs a spotter." "She's got one," Renick said. "It's a notebook. Let her go." She got onto what was left of the platform at 1836 and lay down in it. At 1852, Commander Nathan Cole climbed up after her, which took him 4 minutes and cost him a torn palm, and he lay down beside her because there was nowhere else to be. "Report." "He's coming, sir." "How do you know?" "Because they stopped shooting," Emily said. "They've had all day. They stopped because he told them to. He wants it quiet so he can see." Cole looked out at the horizon and saw absolutely nothing at all. "Captain, I have to ask you the question." "Sir." "Can you make the shot?" Emily was quiet. The wind moved. She watched it move through the low scrub at 900 meters and at 1,500 and at 2,200, 3 different directions in the same minute, and she wrote a figure in the notebook and crossed it out and wrote another. "Sir, do you want the true answer or the one that helps true?" 2,960 meters, she said. The round is going to be in the air about 4.5 seconds. In 4.5 seconds, the Earth turns under it. The air is three different temperatures between me and him. My optic has a crack in the reticle that I have to shoot around, and I have shot around it for 9 years, and I still don't fully trust it. She breathed out. Every single thing about that is impossible, Captain. And I've done it before, she said. At 1904, Whitfield's voice came up from below, and it was so calm that it took a second to understand. Movement, high ground south-southeast. One vehicle. She stopped. Renick, distance. Sergeant, I don't have a rangefinder that goes that far. Best guess. Way past everything, Sergeant. Emily didn't move. She had the scope on it before anyone finished a sentence. He's out, she said. Cole, say again. He's out of the vehicle. He's standing. A pause. He's got glass on us. He's looking right at this tower. Can you see him? I can see his shape, Emily said. It's about the size of the end of a pencil. Cole's hand closed on the steel. Captain, if you can take it, take it. Not yet. Captain. Sir, he's standing next to the vehicle. If I fire now, the round is in the air 4.5 seconds, and he has 4.5 seconds to be behind 2 tons of steel, and he will use them because he's the kind of man who knows how long the round takes. Her voice had gone flat and far away. I need him to walk. Walk where? Forward, Emily said. Away from it. He will. He's been waiting 9 years to look at this. Down below, Renick had turned to face the base, and he was doing the only thing left to do, which was keeping 62 people absolutely silent, and he did it with 2 hands and no words at all. Boone at the berm was praying without moving her lips. Ruiz had his hands over his ears without knowing he'd put them there. At 1908, the shape moved. He's walking, Emily said. And how far? 4 steps, 6. He's clear of the vehicle. Her breathing had changed, gotten slower, longer. Sir, don't talk to me now. Cole stopped breathing entirely. She lay there for 11 seconds. 11 seconds in which she moved nothing except one finger against the elevation turret, and then not even that. The wind laid down. She fired. The sound of it was not big. That was what everybody said afterward. After 2 days of machine guns and mortars, the loudest thing that ever happened at Outpost Redstone was one flat crack off a broken tower. And then nothing. 1 second. 2. 3. Renick had his mouth open. Whitfield had stood all the way up in the open and nobody pulled him down. 4. Cole heard himself whisper, come on. 4.5. Through the cracked reticle at 2,960 meters, the shape that was the size of the end of a pencil folded straight down and did not get back up. Nobody moved. Emily Carter lay perfectly still, with her eye at the scope and her finger off the trigger, and after a long moment she said one word quietly, not to Cole and not to anybody on that base. Done. And 62 Marines who had spent 2 days waiting to die realized all at once and without a single one of them making a sound that the shooting had stopped. Nobody cheered. That was the thing Commander Nathan Cole would think about for the rest of his life. 62 Marines had just watched the impossible happen, and not one of them made a sound because they were all doing the same math in their heads at the same time, and the math said there were still 34 men in that wash. Cole broke first. Renick. Sir, they still have 2 guns in a tube. Get everybody back in a hole. Already moving, sir. Renick was walking the line low and fast, grabbing shoulders. Back in your holes, it's not over. Nobody stands up. Ellery's already got a hole in him, and I'm not filling out 2 of those tonight. Nobody argued. 12 seconds later, the berm was empty of standing men. Up on the wrecked platform, Emily Carter had not moved at all. Captain. Sir, talk to me. I'm waiting. For what? For them to decide, she said. At 1911, the desert stayed quiet. At 1913, it was still quiet. At 1916, Boone's voice came up from the berm, thin and stretched. Sir, why aren't they shooting? Cole didn't have an answer. He looked at Emily. Because there's an argument happening out there, she said. 34 men just watched a man they came here for fold up at 3 kilometers. Some of them are saying finish it. Some of them are saying we're not paid for this. She still had her eye at the scope. The next 10 minutes decide whether anybody else at this outpost dies today. How does it usually go? Sir, there is no usually. At 1922, a single machine gun opened up from the eastern shoulder, and the burst went nowhere near the wire. It went into the sky, into the empty ground, 400 meters short, into nothing at all, and it kept going until the belt ran out. Whitfield, flat on his face, screamed, "What is that, ma'am? What is that?" "That's grief," Emily said quietly. Nobody understood her, and then everybody did. At 1934, the vehicles in the wash started their engines, and Whitfield heard it before he saw it, and his voice cracked completely. Sir, they're moving. Sir, they're moving south. They're going the wrong way. They're going away." "Confirm that," Cole said. "Sir, I've got no drone. I've got no radar. I've got my ears, and they are going away." At 1941, Staff Sergeant Alicia Boone stood up on the berm, which was the single dumbest thing she had done in 11 years, and stood there in the open looking south for 11 seconds while 40 people screamed at her. Then she sat down in the dirt with her legs out in front of her like a child. "They're gone," she said. "Sir, they're gone." At 1943, the outpost came apart, and it did not come apart with cheering. It came apart with the sound Cole had heard exactly twice before in his career, a low, broken noise from 30 different throats, at once men laughing and men crying, and men saying nothing at all, and a private sitting down hard against a tire and putting both hands over his face. Renick did not join it. Renick walked the whole line position by position and touched every single man on the shoulder and said the same 4 words to each one. "You did all right." Then he got to the last position, which was empty because it had been Vance's, and he stood over it for a while with his hands at his sides. At 2002, Emily Carter came down off the tower, and 30 men were standing at the bottom of it, not in formation, just standing there. They'd walked over one at a time without deciding to. She got to the ground and turned around, and there they were. Nobody said anything. She looked at them, and they looked at her, and the silence went on long enough to become something else entirely. Then a lance corporal at the back, a kid named Peralta, who had laughed at that rifle in the motor pool 3 days earlier and had been thinking about it for 72 hours, said the only thing anybody could think of to say. "Ma'am, is there anything you need?" Emily looked at him for a second. "Water," she said, "if we've got any." 4 men ran. At 2014, Corporal Danny Ruiz walked up to her while she was drinking it and stood there until she looked at him. "Ma'am." "Corporal, it's over." "No." "Ma'am, they left." "They left," Emily agreed. "That's not the same as over. It's just the part where we get to sit down." At 21:07, the satellite uplink came back on its own. Whitfield was the only one in the shack. The light went green with no warning, and he stared at it for 4 full seconds before he yelled loud enough to be heard on the far wire. Sir, we're up." Cole was through the door in 20 seconds. Boone right behind him, Renick behind her with blood still dried on his forearms. "Get me district. Get me anybody." "Sir, I've got a full link. I've got bandwidth. I've got—" Whitfield stopped. "Sir, I've got 11 queued messages." "Read them." "Sir." "Read them out loud. Corporal, all of them right now." Whitfield read them. The first 3 were routine. The 4th was a weather advisory. The 5th was a supply schedule. The 6th was time-stamped 2 days earlier at 11:04 in the morning, and it said that a quick reaction force had been placed on 90-minute standby for Outpost Redstone. Whitfield stopped reading. "Keep going," Cole said, and his voice had gone very strange. The 7th was from that same afternoon, and it said the standby had been extended. The 8th said extended again. The 9th at 06:30 that morning, while Redstone was taking mortar fire and losing its generator, said the reaction force was to hold. The 10th at 1400, 1 hour after Aaron Vance died carrying ammunition between 2 positions, said the same thing in different words. The 11th had come in 8 minutes ago. Whitfield's voice had gone to nothing. "Sir, it says the situation at Redstone is assessed as resolved and the reaction force is released from standby." Nobody moved. Boone said, "Read the last line again." "Assessed as resolved, ma'am." "By who?" "It doesn't say, ma'am." Renick turned around and walked out of the shack, and 30 seconds later, they heard something metal hit something else, metal very hard twice, and then stop. Cole stood with both hands on the table for a long time. "Sir," Whitfield said finally, and he sounded about 15 years old. "Sir, they were 90 minutes away. The whole time. They were 90 minutes away when Vance..." Corporal, they were 90 minutes away, sir. Whitfield. Cole put his hand on the kid's shoulder and gripped it hard. Go outside, get some air. That's an order, and it's a good order, and you're going to follow it. Whitfield went. Boone waited until the door shut. Nathan, don't. They watched, she said. They sat on a reaction force for 2 days and watched, and the second she made the shot, they wrote resolved. I know what it says. That's not an accident. That's not a slow staff. Somebody made a decision. I know that too. So say it out loud. Cole looked at the screen for a long moment. They wanted to know if Marchand was alive, he said. That's the whole thing. Somebody upstairs had reason to think a man we buried 9 years ago was walking around, and there was exactly one person on this earth who could confirm it, and exactly one thing that would make him come out and stand in the open. Boone's voice was almost gentle. Her. Her, Cole said, and us. We were the reason she couldn't run. At 21:43, Emily Carter was sitting on an ammunition crate cleaning her rifle, which was the only thing she ever seemed to do when she wasn't shooting it, and Cole came around the corner of the maintenance bay and sat down across from her without asking. You knew, he said. Sir, don't do that. Not tonight. You knew what this was. Emily kept working the patch through. I suspected on the first morning, she said. I was sure at about 10:30 on the second day when the satellite went down and the district net came apart at the same time. Sir, jamming that good is expensive. Somebody's very good equipment was pointed at us for 2 days, and nobody at any level lifted a finger about it. You didn't tell me. No, Captain, sir, what would you have done with it? Cole opened his mouth and shut it again. Exactly, Emily said, not unkindly. You'd have spent the next 48 hours on a radio that didn't work fighting a war you couldn't win against people you couldn't reach instead of running your outpost. And your Marines would have felt it in you. They can always feel it. Cole rubbed his face with both hands. There's a message on my terminal that says resolved. I know. How do you know you haven't been in the shack? Because there's always a message that says resolved, Emily said. There was one 9 years ago. It came 11 hours after the eastern slope. It said the operation had achieved its intent. Cole looked up. Had it? 11 men, sir, Emily said. You tell me what intent that achieves. At 22:10, Renick came looking for Cole and found them both, and he stopped at the corner of the bay with his hands opening and closing at his sides. Sir, ma'am, permission to be out of line. Denied, Cole said. Say it anyway. I want to know who wrote resolved. Renick's voice was shaking, and he wasn't trying to hide it. Sir, I want a name. I carried Vance in myself. He weighed 210 pounds, and I got him to the wall in 9 seconds, and I want to know the name of the person who was drinking coffee somewhere with a reaction force sitting on a ramp. Sergeant, I don't have a name. Then get one. Renick. Sir, get one. I'm going to try, Cole said, and I want you to hear the rest of it because I'm not going to lie to my section leader on the worst night of his life. I'm going to write it up. I'm going to write every timestamp and every message, and I'm going to send it to 4 different offices. And Sergeant, I have been in this uniform 22 years, and I'm telling you the most likely outcome is a very polite letter. Renick stared at him. That's it. That might be it. Sir, that's not, his voice went. He got it back. That's not enough. No, Cole said, it isn't. Renick turned to Emily. Ma'am, did you know they'd do this to us? Emily set the rifle down across her knees. Sergeant, sit down. Ma'am, I don't want to sit down. Victor, she said, sit. He sat on the dirt with his back against the wall, which was as close to sitting as he could manage. You want to know if I knew a room full of people would spend this outpost to answer a question? Emily said. The answer is yes. I've known that since I was 26 years old. I've known it every single day since a man named Alexis Marchand walked into our tent and drank our coffee for 3 weeks. Then how do you keep doing it? That's the right question, Emily said. That's the only real question anybody out here ever asks. So what's the answer? Emily was quiet a long moment. I don't do it for them, she said. I stopped doing it for them 9 years ago on a Tuesday at about 4 in the afternoon. I do it for the 12 people standing next to me, and I have never once been confused about the difference since. Renick put his head back against the wall and closed his eyes. Vance had a boy, he said. 14 months. He showed me a picture Tuesday. I said something stupid about how the kid had a big head. What did Vance say? Renick laughed wet and broken. He said all Vances have big heads. He said it's how you know. Sergeant, ma'am, somebody is going to have to tell that boy's mother something one day, Emily said, and it's going to be a man in a uniform reading off a card, and it's going to be true, and it's going to be worth nothing. So one day when that kid is old enough, you are going to find him, and you are going to tell him the part the card doesn't have. What part? That his father was moving ammunition between two positions so that other men could keep shooting, Emily said. He wasn't hiding, and he wasn't lucky, and he wasn't a statistic. He was doing the one job on that whole base that nobody would have noticed if he'd stopped doing it. Renick was crying openly now, and not one person made him feel bad about it. Yes, ma'am. You promised me that. I promise, ma'am. At 23:50, Private Ellery woke up in the aid station and asked for Sergeant Renick. And Renick came and the kid's first words were, Sergeant, did she really do it? She really did it. How far? Almost 3,000 meters. Ellery lay there for a second processing that through morphine. Sergeant, I laughed at her rifle. So did I. No, Sergeant, I laughed loud. Ellery, I picked it up off her and dropped it in the dirt in front of 40 guys. Renick said, You didn't do anything. I did the thing. You just stood there being 20. The kid's eyes filled up. Do you think she knows I'm sorry? Son, Renick said, she's known since about 11 o'clock on Tuesday morning. That's the whole problem with her. She sees the entire thing about a person in about 4 seconds, and then she doesn't hold it against you, and there's nothing you can do with that. You just have to live with being seen. At 0217, the relief finally came, and it came big. 2 helicopters, then vehicles on the road at first light, a medical section, a communications team, a full company of Marines who came in hard and fast and found an outpost with no water, no northern generator, a wrecked observation tower, 1 dead, 1 wounded, and 62 people who had been awake for close to 50 hours. A lieutenant colonel got off the second aircraft and started asking questions in a loud voice. He found Cole in the operations shack, and Cole stood up slowly. Commander, I'm told you had contact. That's one word for it, sir. I want a situation brief. Sir, before I give you a situation brief, I want to ask you a question, and I want to ask it in front of my staff, Sergeant, because I'd like a witness. The colonel's face changed. Commander, there was a reaction force on 90-minute standby for 2 days, Cole said. Who released it? That's above your line. Sir, my line is 64 people, one of whom is in a body bag on the north side of the motor pool, and I would like to know who wrote the word resolved at 20:59 last night. The shack went dead silent. The colonel looked at him for a long time, and something moved in his face, and Boone would say afterward that it was the first honest thing she'd seen from anybody above the rank of major in 5 years. Commander, and he said quietly, I got here as fast as they let me. Understand what I'm telling you. As fast as they let me. Cole absorbed that. Yes, sir. Write it all down, the colonel said. Every timestamp. Don't soften a word of it. I'll carry it as far as I can carry it, and I'll tell you honestly that I don't know how far that is. He paused at the door. Where's Captain Carter? Asleep, sir. For how long? 90 minutes. The colonel nodded slowly. Let her sleep. At 0640, they flew Vance out. Every person at Outpost Redstone who could stand was standing, including Ellery, who got out of a cot he should not have gotten out of and made it 40 feet on a corpsman's shoulder because he refused to be sitting down. Renick carried the front left. He'd asked for it. Emily Carter stood in the third rank with the rifle slung across her back, and afterward, when the aircraft was a dot, and then nothing, Peralta, the lance corporal, who had laughed loudest at the back of the crowd 3 days before, came up beside her. Ma'am, can I ask you something? Go ahead. Does it get easier? No. That's what I figured. He wiped his face. Everybody keeps saying it does. They say it because they want it to, Emily said. Here's the true version. It doesn't get easier. You get bigger. That's all that ever happens. You end up able to carry more than you could carry before, and it feels like the same thing from the outside, and it is not the same thing at all. Peralta thought about that for a while. Ma'am, that's not comforting. No, Emily agreed, but you'll be able to use it, and comfort you can't use is just noise. At 0915, A two-man team arrived on the third aircraft who did not wear name tapes and did not introduce themselves, and they asked for Captain Carter, and they asked for her rifle. Renick found out about it at 09:17. He was across the motor pool in 11 seconds. Sir, he put himself between them and the maintenance bay, and he said it politely, and every man watching understood that politeness had about 4 seconds left in it. Sir, what do you need? Sergeant, step aside. Sir, what do you need? The weapon's being recovered for technical evaluation. No, it isn't. Sergeant. Boone arrived, then Ruiz, then Whitfield, who had no business being there, and then Peralta, and then 6 more, and then it was 20 Marines standing in a loose arc across the front of that maintenance bay, and nobody had said a word to organize it. This is an outstanding way to end your career, one of the men said. Yes, sir, Renick said. Probably. Cole came through the middle of it at 09:21. Everybody stand down. Sir. Sergeant Renick, I said stand down. That's not a request, and you know it isn't. Renick stepped back. 1 step. Not 2. Cole turned to the 2 men. Gentlemen, I'm the commander of this position. What's the authority? It's a standing recovery order, Commander. It's 9 years old. It was written when the weapon was returned to service. Show me. They showed him a document on a tablet. Cole read it. Then he read it again slower, and something in his shoulders changed. This says the weapon may be recovered upon completion of the operation for which it was issued. That's correct. What operation? Silence. Gentlemen, Cole said, I'm going to ask that again, and I want you to think hard about the room you're standing in. What operation was this weapon issued for? The taller man said, that's classified. Then here's my problem, Cole said. You're telling me there was an operation. My Marines were in it. One of them is on an aircraft right now, and you can't tell me its name. He handed the tablet back. I'm not obstructing you. I want that on the record. But I'm not going to be the one who takes it, and nobody at this outpost is going to help you. And if you want it, you're going to have to go into that bay and take it off her yourself in front of these people this morning, after what she did here. Nobody moved. At 09:29, Emily Carter came out of the maintenance bay on her own with the rifle in her hands and walked into the middle of it. 20 Marines went absolutely still. Ma'am, don't, Renick said. Ma'am, please. She held the rifle out. Ma'am. Sergeant. She held it out and the taller man reached for it, and then Emily said one sentence in a voice that carried across that entire motor pool. Before you take it, tell these Marines the 11 names. The man's hands stopped in the air. Ma'am. You know them, Emily said. You've read the file. I can't say them. I signed a piece of paper and have kept it for 9 years, and I will keep it until I die. And I have never once been able to say those 11 names out loud, not to their mothers, not to their wives, not at a single funeral I attended in civilian clothes standing at the back. Her voice never rose. You didn't sign it. You have it in a drawer, so say them. The whole outpost was silent. I can't do that, the man said. No, Emily said. You can't. So you understand there are only 2 things in the world that carry those 11 men now. There's a file in a building I'm not allowed to enter, and there's this. She lifted the rifle slightly, and one of those 2 things was in the dirt in this exact spot on Tuesday morning, and the other one wrote resolved at 20:59 last night. The man lowered his hand. Take it if you're going to take it, Emily said, but take it in front of them. Nobody breathed. At 09:34, the taller man stepped back. We'll file an exception, he said. You do that. Captain, this isn't... He stopped, started again. Ma'am, I want you to know that I asked in the vehicle on the way in whether this could wait. I believe you. It's going to come up again. I know it is, Emily said. It comes up about every 18 months. They left on the 1130 aircraft and nobody said goodbye to them, and Whitfield stood on the berm and watched the whole thing leave the ground. At 12:04, Renick found Emily behind the maintenance bay for the last time in the same spot, on the same crate doing the same thing, and he sat down across from her without asking permission because they were past that. Ma'am, can I say something stupid? Always. I've been trying since Tuesday to figure out what I actually did wrong, he said, and I keep coming back to it, and it keeps being a different answer. First, I thought I was wrong about the rifle. Then, I thought I was wrong about you. He shook his head. That's not it. Those are both true, but that's not it. What is it? Renick looked at his hands. I made a decision about a person in 10 seconds, he said, And then I spent a day and a half defending the decision instead of looking at the person. And ma'am, I've done that my whole life. That's not a bad morning. That's a habit. Emily set the patch down. Sergeant, she said, do you know how many people have ever said that to me out loud? No, ma'am. One. Renick's throat worked. Ma'am, I dropped it in the dirt. You did. I keep going back to the sound it made. So do I, Emily said, but not for the reason you think. Ma'am. She turned the rifle so the light caught that long pin seam in the walnut, the repair, the split that somebody had put back together a long time ago with their own hands. That crack, she said, that's not from Tuesday. That's from 9 years ago. That's from a hill in the dark with a man on my shoulder that I wouldn't put down. Her thumb moved along it slow. His name was Ridge. He fixed it for me, actually, 2 weeks before. He was the only one in the whole unit who could work wood. He pinned it and sanded it and gave it back to me and said, now it's better than new. And then he laughed for about 10 minutes because he thought that was the funniest thing anybody had ever said. Renick didn't move. And then it broke again in the same place. Emily said, carrying him. Ma'am, so when you dropped it on Tuesday, Sergeant, I wasn't thinking about you at all, she said. I was thinking that if that seam opened up on hardpack in an Arizona motor pool over a joke, then the last thing Ridge ever made with his hands would be gone and there would be nothing left of him anywhere except a name on a page I'm not allowed to read out loud. Renick put both hands over his face and sat there for a long time. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I know. I don't know what to do with it. Nothing, Beto, Emily said. You don't do anything with it. You just carry it and you let it make you slower about people. That's the whole use of it. At 13:45, Commander Nathan Cole sat down to write the mission report, and he sat there for 50 minutes without typing a word. Boone brought him coffee at 14:35 and looked over his shoulder at a blank screen. Stuck. I've got 60 pages of timestamps, Cole said. I've got a dead corporal, the row wounded private, 3 days of contact, a confirmed engagement at 2,960 meters. A jamming envelope somebody paid a lot of money for, and 11 messages from higher that read like a coroner's report. He gestured at the screen. And I can't find the first sentence. Then don't start at the beginning, Boone said. Start at the true part. Which part is that? Boone thought about it. Nathan, she said on Tuesday morning, 40 of our people watched a woman get her weapon taken out of her hands and dropped in the dirt. And every one of us decided in about 4 seconds what kind of person she was, and every single one of us was wrong. Cole looked at the screen a while longer. Then he put his hands on the keys and started to type. He started with Boone's sentence almost word for word, and then he stopped and deleted it because it wasn't his to say that way. He typed it again in his own words at 14:47, and this time he left it. On the morning of the 18th 40, Marines under my command watched a captain's weapon taken from her hands and dropped in the dirt, and every one of us made a judgment in 4 seconds, and every one of us was wrong. Boone read it over his shoulder and didn't say anything for a while. You're going to catch hell for that, she said finally. I know. They're going to say it's editorial. It is editorial. Then leave it in, Boone said, and went to find something else to do so he wouldn't see her face. Cole wrote for 9 hours. He wrote through Chow. He wrote through the generator crew. Swapping out the northern unit, he wrote through 2 separate people knocking on the door and deciding against it when they saw the back of his head. He put in every timestamp. He put in the 11 queued messages verbatim, including the one that said resolved, including the 90-minute standby, and the 2 extensions in the hold. He put in the words the man on the HF had used, and he put in the fact that a captain assigned to his outpost had recognized a voice she wasn't allowed to explain. At 23:41, he typed the last line and sat back and looked at it for a long time before he sent it. At 07:10 the next morning, his terminal chimed with an acknowledgement receipt, and that was the last thing anybody said to him about it for 6 weeks. At 0900 on the 22nd, a company of engineers arrived to pull down what was left of the observation tower, and they got about 10 minutes into it before Sergeant Victor Renick walked across the motor pool and stood in front of the equipment. Sergeant, we've got a work order. I know you do. Then you know we're pulling it. I need you to hold 10 minutes. Sergeant, 10 minutes, Renick said. I'm not going to fight you, and I'm not going to stand here after that. 10 minutes. The engineer looked at him and then looked past him at about 30 Marines who had stopped what they were doing and were watching and made a decision that was probably the smartest one he made that year. 10 minutes. Renick got a torch off the maintenance rack and went up the outside of that frame the way she had, hand over hand, and everybody watched him do it. He was up there 4 minutes. When he came down, he had a rectangle of steel plate about the size of a book in his hand, cut out of the platform decking, and he didn't show it to anybody, and he didn't explain it, and nobody asked. They put the tower down at 09:30. At 10:15, Corporal Danny Ruiz found Renick sitting behind the maintenance bay with that piece of steel across his knees and a file in his hand. "Sergeant?" "Ruiz." "What are you making?" "I don't know yet." Ruiz sat down. He'd gotten better at sitting down since Tuesday. It was a small thing, and neither of them said it out loud. "Sergeant, can I ask you something?" "You keep asking permission." "You got that from her?" "I got a lot from her, though." Renick kept filing. "Go ahead. Why'd you never talk about March?" The file stopped. "With me, I mean," Ruiz said. 16 months, Sergeant. We were in the same convoy. We came back on the same aircraft. We've been on this rock together for 11 months, and neither of us said the word out loud one time." Renick set the plate down. "Because you pulled two of them out," he said, "and I gave the order that put them in there. That's the whole reason. I couldn't look at you without hearing myself say push through, and I figured you couldn't look at me without hearing it either, so I made sure you didn't have to look at me. I made a lot of noise. It works." Ruiz was quiet. "Sergeant, I never blamed you." "I know. No, listen to me." Ruiz leaned forward. 16 months, I thought you couldn't stand me. I thought you looked at me and saw the guy who got there first and got two out and made you look slow." Renick turned and stared at him. "Are you serious?" "Dead serious, Sergeant. Ruiz, I have thought about you every single night since March, and not one of those nights was about you being fast." Renick's voice cracked. "It was about me being late." They sat there for a minute. "So that's 16 months, Ruiz said. "That's 16 months. Both of us." "Both of us," Renick said. "Two grown men on a base the size of a parking lot." Ruiz laughed first, and then Renick did, and it went on longer than it should have, and turned into something that wasn't laughing at all, and neither one of them apologized for it. At 13:40, Private Ellery came off the aircraft that was supposed to take him to the hospital in San Diego on crutches and refused to get back on it. The corpsman found Renick in about 90 seconds. "Sergeant, your private won't fly." "He's not my private, he's the commander's private." "Sergeant, please." Renick found Ellery standing on the pad with his jaw set like a 20-year-old who has decided one thing in his life. "Ellery?" "Sergeant, I'm not going." "Yes, you are." "Sergeant, they're going to send me to rehab, and then they're going to send me to a desk somewhere, and I'm never going to see any of you again. And I was here, Sergeant. I was here for the whole thing." "You were. So I'm staying." Renick looked at that kid for a long moment. "Ellery, come here." "Sergeant, come here." He came over. Renick took him by the shoulder gently because there was a hole in his leg and because there was another reason. "You've got a femoral artery that's intact by about the width of a pencil," Renick said. "The corpsman told me that himself. You know what that means? That means somebody up there was paying attention for about a half second on Thursday, and you got the half second. Now you can spend that half second sitting in the dirt at an outpost with no water, proving something to men who already know it, or you can get on that aircraft, get fixed, and come back." "They won't let me come back." "Then you'll go somewhere else, and you'll be the guy who was at Redstone," Renick said. "And someday there's going to be a 19-year-old standing in front of you, making a joke about somebody's gear, and you're going to know exactly what to say to him, and you're going to say it, and that kid is going to go his whole career not being what I was. That's what you do with it, Ellery. That's the whole job now." Ellery's eyes filled. "Sergeant, that's not fair." "No," Renick said. "Get on the plane." He got on the plane. He looked back once from the ramp, and 30 men were standing out there in the sun, and he'd remember it for 50 years. At 16:20 on the 24th, Captain Emily Carter received orders to remain at Outpost Redstone, indefinitely pending review, and Cole read them twice and then went to find her. "They're leaving you here." "I saw, sir." "Captain, that's not normal. You should be somewhere with a debrief team and a psychologist in a room with a door that locks." "Sir, I've been in that room. It's not as good as it sounds." "That's not the point." "No, sir, the point is that somebody in a building somewhere doesn't know what to do with me, And parking is easier than deciding. She almost smiled. It's fine, I've been parked before. Cole studied her. Is it fine? Emily was quiet for a second longer than she needed to be. Sir, I've got 62 people on this base who know exactly what happened. Here, she said. That's more than I've had in 9 years. I'll take parked. At 07:30 on the 29th, Whitfield came into the operations shack with a face on him and set a printout in front of Cole without a word. Cole read it. Then he stood up. Get Renick, get Boone, get the captain. Sir, what is it? Get them corporal. They came in 5 minutes and Cole put the sheet on the table. Yesterday, a Mexican federal patrol found a burned vehicle 41 miles southwest of our position, he said. In it were 2 men deceased and a quantity of communications equipment consistent with a directional jamming array. Boone's head came up. The burn, she said. Whitfield's orange glow, night 1. Same grid. Sir, that was before the attack even started. That's right, Renick said. So who burned it? That's the part, Cole said and pushed the second page over. The Mexicans ran the serials. That equipment was purchased 11 months ago through a procurement channel that terminates at a contracting office in Virginia. Nobody said anything at all. Sir, Boone said carefully, say that in small words. The gear that cut us off from the world, Cole said, was bought with a purchase order that came out of an American office. Renick put both hands on the table and leaned on them. Sir, are you telling me? I'm not telling you anything. I'm reading you a document. Sir, with respect, that's a coward's answer, and you're not a coward. Cole didn't get angry. That was the thing about him. You're right, he said. Here's the non-coward answer, and it goes no further than these 4 people. Somebody bought that equipment. Somebody moved it across a border. Somebody put it in the hands of a man we buried 9 years ago. And then somebody put a captain on a truck to Iraq in Arizona with no explanation. And then somebody set on a reaction force for 2 days and wrote resolved 11 minutes after she fired. He straightened up. And I have exactly 0 proof that those somebodies are the same somebody. And I am going to spend a considerable portion of the rest of my career finding out. Emily had not said a word. Captain, Cole said, you're very quiet. Sir, I'm doing arithmetic. On what? On 11 months, she said. That equipment was bought 11 months ago. Sir, 11 months ago, I was teaching at a school in Virginia, and I had been teaching there for 4 years. And about 11 months ago, somebody pulled my file for an evaluation nobody ever explained to me. The shack went completely still. Ma'am, Renick said, and his voice had gone rough. Are you saying they started building this before? I'm saying 11 months is a long time to plan a thing that only takes 1 afternoon, Emily said. And I'm saying that whatever this was, it did not start on Tuesday, and it did not start with you, and it did not start with any of you. Whitfield in the corner said very quietly, Ma'am, what did we walk into? Emily looked at him. Corporal, she said, you didn't walk into anything. You were standing here. Somebody walked something into you. At 1100 on the 3rd of the following month, a board convened at Camp Pendleton, and Commander Nathan Cole flew out to it with a binder 600 pages thick. And he was told when he arrived that the board's terms of reference had been narrowed to the conduct of the defense of Outpost Redstone. He stood in the hallway with that binder in both hands and understood exactly what had been done to him. He went in anyway. He testified for 4 hours. He was asked about ammunition expenditure and casualty evacuation timelines in the decision to clear the observation tower. He was not asked about the 11 messages once. At 1540, a colonel on the board said, Commander, is there anything further you wish to add? And Cole said, yes, sir, 60 pages of it. Commander, the board's scope. Sir, I understand the scope. I'd like it on the record that I asked to exceed it and that I was told no, and that I'm going to ask again in writing every 30 days for as long as I hold a commission. He set the binder on the table. That's all, sir. He walked out. In the hallway, a lieutenant colonel he'd never met was standing by the window, and Cole recognized him after a second as the man who'd gotten off the 2nd aircraft at Redstone. Commander, sir, how did it go? They asked me about ammunition, sir. The colonel nodded slowly like a man hearing exactly what he expected. I carried yours as far as I could, and he said, it went 2 levels. On the 3rd level, it stopped, and a very pleasant man explained to me that the timestamps were consistent with an evolving intelligence picture. Is that true, sir? It's a sentence, the colonel said. It's a very good sentence. Somebody worked on it. Cole looked out the window for a while. Sir, I've got a sergeant back there who wants a name. I know he does. Do you have one? No, the colonel said. And Commander, listen to me, because this is the only useful thing I've got. You are not going to get one. Not because it doesn't exist. Because the whole architecture is built so that it doesn't have to. He turned. But you wrote it down. Every timestamp. And it's in 4 systems now, and it doesn't come out. And in 11 years or 15, somebody's going to be looking for exactly that. And it's going to be there because a commander with 64 people and no water sat up all night and typed it. That's not enough, sir. No, the colonel said. It's just what there is. At 20:50 on the 6th, Cole came back through the wire at Redstone and found Renick waiting for him in the motor pool. Just standing there. He'd been there an hour. Sir, Sergeant, did you get one? Cole set his bag down. No. Renick nodded. He'd known. He stood there nodding for longer than a man needs to. Sergeant, I'm all right, sir. You're not. No, sir, I'm not, Renick said. But I'd like to be allowed to say I am for about 10 minutes, and then I'll come find you. He came and found him at 2210, and they sat in the shack with the door open, and Cole told him everything, including the part about the evolving intelligence picture, and Renick listened all the way to the end without interrupting once, which was not a thing he'd been capable of a month earlier. So that's it, he said. That's what I've got. Sir, I want to say something, and I want you to know I thought about it the whole time you were gone. Go ahead. I'm not going to spend my life on it, Renick said. Cole looked up sharply. Sir, hear me out. 2 weeks ago, I wanted a name so bad I could taste it. I'd have driven to Virginia. I'd have walked into a building. He rubbed his jaw. And then I sat with it, and I realized what I actually wanted was for somebody to be responsible. Because if somebody's responsible, then it means something. And if nobody's responsible, then Vance died for a question that got answered on a screen somewhere. Sergeant, but that's backwards, sir. Renick's voice was steady. Vance didn't die for their reason. He died carrying ammunition to men who needed it on a base that held, and it held. That's not their thing. That's ours. They don't get to own it just because they set the table. Cole didn't say anything for a long moment. Where'd you get that? From her, sir. Where else? At 06:20 on the 11th, Emily Carter was on the berm with the rangefinder in her notebook doing what she did every single morning, and Lance Corporal Peralta came out and stood a respectful 10 feet away for 4 minutes before she spoke. You can come closer, Peralta. Ma'am, I don't want to interrupt. You've been interrupting for 4 minutes. Come here. He came over. Ma'am, I want to ask you for something, and it's a big thing. Ask. Teach me. Emily lowered the rangefinder. Teach you what? That. He pointed at the notebook. Not the shooting. Anybody can teach shooting. The other thing, the thing where you knew they were out there at 5 in the morning off 2 radar hits. The thing where you cleared the tower 12 hours before they shot it to pieces. His face was red. Ma'am, I laughed at your rifle. I want to say that out loud before I ask you for anything. I was in the 3rd row and I laughed, and I'm the one who said it was a museum piece to about 6 different people. I know you did. Ma'am, Peralta, I knew who laughed and how loud within about 2 minutes, Emily said. That's not a talent. That's just what you learn when you have been the new person a lot. He stood there wanting to sink into the ground. Ma'am, so is that a no? Emily looked at him for a second. Get a notebook, she said. A real one with a cover, not your phone. Ma'am, every morning at 0600, you're going to write down the wind at 4 points on this perimeter, the temperature and the pressure. Every morning, when it's boring, when nothing's happening. Especially then. She handed him the rangefinder. In 4 months, you'll be able to look at a piece of scrub at 900 meters and tell me what the air is doing at 2000. You won't know how. You'll just know. Peralta held that rangefinder like it was made of glass. Ma'am, that's it. That's the secret. That's the whole secret, Emily said. Everybody wants it to be something else. It's showing up on a morning when nobody's shooting at you. By the end of the month, there were 4 of them out there at 0600. By the end of the 2nd month, there were 9, and Boone started calling it the Sunrise Club, and Renick pretended to be annoyed about it and was the one who found them a box of proper notebooks. At 14:30 on the 19th, Whitfield came into the shack white as paper. Sir, you need to see this. Corporal, you've got to stop opening with that. Sir, it's the operation file. Cole was out of his chair. The system had opened the same 2 pages it had opened before, but this time there was a third, and the third page was a distribution list. And the distribution list had a name on it that Cole recognized because he had heard it 4 days earlier in a hallway at Camp Pendleton. Sir, Whitfield said, is that the same guy who to close it? Sir, close the file, Corporal, and don't print it, and don't say the name out loud in this shack or any other, and go get me Staff Sergeant Boone. Whitfield closed it. Cole stood there with his hand over his mouth. Boone came in at 14:39. Nathan, I've got a name. Boone shut the door behind her. Say it. No. Nathan. Alicia, I've got a name on a distribution list, on a page, a system opened for me, twice under an exception I don't understand on a network I don't control from an office that has known where I am the whole time. He was breathing hard. You want to tell me that's an accident? Boone's face changed. They gave it to you, Buck. That's what I think. Why? That's what I've been standing here trying to figure out. Cole sat down slowly, and the best answer I've got is that somebody in that building is as sick about this as I am and can't say so, and this is what they can do. Or, Boone said, or they're seeing what I do with it. They looked at each other. What are you going to do with it? She asked. Cole was quiet for a long time. I'm going to write it in the log, he said. Time date what I saw no name, and I'm going to put the name in a sealed envelope with my attorney in Yuma, and I'm going to keep doing my job. And if the day ever comes when somebody with authority actually wants it, it'll be there. And if that day never comes, then it'll be in a drawer in Yuma when I'm dead, Cole said, and it will still be true. At 0900 on the 27th, the 2 men without name tapes came back. Renick saw the aircraft before it landed and was standing in the motor pool when the ramp came down, and this time he didn't move to block anybody. He just stood there with his arms crossed, and behind him, without a word being said, 26 Marines came out of the maintenance bay and the chow hall and the wire and formed up in a loose line that was not a formation and was absolutely a formation. The taller man walked over and stopped. Sergeant, sir, you're going to want to hear this before you decide what kind of morning this is. I'm listening, sir. The man reached into his jacket and took out a folded document and held it out. The exception was filed, he said. It went to a panel. The panel sat on it for 5 weeks. He paused. It was denied. Renick's arms came down. Say that in Marine, sir. The recovery order is void, the man said. The weapon is hers, permanently, personally by name, and it can't be reopened without an act that would embarrass a great many people. Renick stared at the paper. Who denied it? That's classified, the man said. And then after a second in a completely different voice, it was a 2-person panel sergeant, and one of them read a mission report that came out of this outpost in November, and the report had a sentence in it about 40 Marines making a judgment in 4 seconds. Behind Renick, somebody made a noise. Cole had come out of the shack and was standing in the middle of the motor pool with his hands at his sides. Commander, the man said, sir, your report didn't fix anything. I know. It fixed one thing, the man said, and put the document in his hand. At 09:15, Renick went to find her, and he ran, which nobody had seen him do since the day he carried Vance. She was behind the maintenance bay. Of course she was. Ma'am, Sergeant, ma'am, stand up. Why, ma'am, please stand up. She stood up with his rifle in her hand, and he put the document in front of her and watched her read it, and he watched her face, and he would tell his own children about the next 15 seconds when they were old enough. She read it twice. Then she read it a third time. Then Captain Emily Carter sat down on that ammunition crate very suddenly, like her legs had been taken away, and put the rifle across her knees and put both hands flat on it and did not make a sound. Renick knelt down in front of her. Ma'am. Give me a second, Sergeant. Take all of them, ma'am. She sat there with her head down and her hands on that old repaired stock, and after a while she said in a voice nobody at Redstone had ever heard out of her 9 years. Ma'am, 9 years I've been waiting for somebody to come take it. Every 18 months, every transfer, every time a vehicle I didn't recognize came through a gate. Her hands were shaking. Sergeant, I have not unpacked a bag since 2016. Not once, not one bag, because I have never been anywhere long enough to believe I'd still have it in the morning. Rennick's eyes were streaming and he didn't care. It's yours, ma'am. It was never mine, Emily said. That's the part nobody understood. It was Ridge's work and it was 11 men's proof and I was just the one holding it. Ma'am, then it's still that, Rennick said. It's just that now nobody can take it from the person holding it. Emily lifted her head. Sergeant, did you do this? No, ma'am. Somebody did. The commander wrote a report, Rennick said. That's all. He wrote it in one night and he wouldn't take out the part they told him to take out, and 5 weeks later, a panel read it. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand. Ma'am, a man typed a sentence about the worst thing I ever did in my life, and it came back around and got you your rifle. I don't know what to do with that. Nothing, Emily said. You just let it make you slower about people. Rennick laughed so hard he had to sit down in the dirt. At 1900 that night, the whole outpost ate together for the first time since the attack. And somebody had gotten hold of stakes in a way that Cole made a point of never asking about. And at some point in the middle of it, a young Marine at the far table said the words, "Museum piece" out loud, and the entire chow hall went silent. The kid went gray. Then Emily Carter from the end of the second table said, "It is actually." Everyone turned. It's a 1998 receiver on a stock somebody made in a shop in 2016, she said, and the glass is older than most of you, and it has a crack in the reticle that runs about 4 minutes low left, and I have never once been able to get it replaced, and honestly, the trigger's terrible. Nobody knew what to do. So the joke was fine, Emily said. It was just early. The chow hall came apart. It went on for a solid minute, and the kid who'd said it laughed harder than anybody because he'd just been let off a hook. He was going to remember his whole life, and Boone leaned over to Cole and said, "Sir, I think she just finished it." Finished what? Whatever's had been happening on this base for 2 months, Boone said. She just closed it. At 11:30 on the 14th of the following month, Sergeant Victor Renick took 4 days of leave and drove to Yuma. He'd written to Vance's wife twice and torn up both letters. He'd called once and hung up before it rang. So he drove and he sat in the car outside the house for 26 minutes and then he got out because he had made a promise behind a maintenance bay to a woman who had never once let him off anything. Her name was Marisol. She opened the door with the baby on her hip. "You're Renick." "Yes, ma'am." "He talked about you." Rennick's throat closed. "Ma'am, I'd like to tell you some things, and some of them are going to be hard, and if you want me to stop at any point, I'll stop and I'll go." She looked at him for a long moment. "Come in," she said. "The card they read me was 4 sentences long." He was there 5 hours. He told her about the ammunition. He told her exactly where the 2 positions were and exactly why the men in them could not have kept firing without somebody doing what Vance was doing. He told her that it took 9 seconds to get to him and that it had already not mattered before he started running and that he had made her look him in the eye while he said that part because he had promised somebody he would not soften it. He told her about the big head joke. She laughed at that, and then she cried, and then she laughed again and said, "That's him. That's exactly him." He said that about my father. At the end, when he was standing at the door, she said, "Sergeant, can I ask you something?" "Anything, ma'am." "Was it worth it?" Renick had known that question was coming for 400 miles, and he still wasn't ready. "Ma'am, no," he said. "There isn't a thing on that base worth him, and there isn't a reason anybody's told me that I'd repeat to you in your own house." Marisol nodded slowly. "Thank you," she said. "The last 3 people said yes." "Ma'am, I'm not finished," Renick said. "It wasn't worth it. And he did it anyway, and he did it right, and 62 people came home because a handful of men, including him, did the boring part while it was happening. Those are both true at the same time. Nobody's going to explain to you how they can both be true, ma'am. I've been trying for 11 weeks and I can't do it either." She was quiet. "When he's older," she said, "will you tell him that?" "Ma'am, I'll tell him that as many times as he'll let me." At 1550 on the 2nd of March, exactly 1 year after the wash, Danny Ruiz put in a package for Scout Sniper School and he brought it to Emily to sign. "Awesome, Iron. Corporal, you know what this is going to be like." "Yes, ma'am." "No, you don't. You know what people say it's like." She was reading it. "You had got 16 months of not sleeping behind you in a school that's going to put you on a hill alone for 11 hours at a time with nothing to do but think." Ruiz didn't flinch. "Ma'am, that's why." Emily looked up. "Say more." Ma'am, for 16 months, the worst thing in the world was being alone with my own head, Ruiz said. And then you sat on a crate and asked me how many, and I said 3, and you didn't say anything at all, and it was the first time in 16 months that a thing got smaller instead of bigger. His voice was steady. I want to be able to be alone with it, not because it's gone, because I want to be bigger than it like you said to Peralta. Emily signed it. Ma'am, that's it? Corporal, you just gave me the best answer to that question I've heard in 11 years of teaching, she said. What was I going to do? Ask you about your runtime. At 07:30 on the 9th of April, Commander Nathan Cole received a routine notification that he was being reassigned, and at 800 he received a second one, and the second one was not routine at all. He read it 3 times, and then he walked out into the motor pool and stood there in the middle of it. Boone found him. Sir, they're closing Redstone. What consolidation, 90 days? He held out the sheet. Everything moves 40 miles east to a position with a real perimeter and a real comm suite, and I assume a functioning radar. Boone read it and swore in 2 languages. Sir, we held this rock. I know. We held it with nothing and they left us out here and now they're closing it like it was a bad idea from the start. Alicia. No, sir. That's the part I can't. She stopped and got herself back. Sorry, sir. Don't be. Cole took the sheet back. I stood in a hallway at Pendleton and a colonel told me the whole architecture is built so nobody has to be responsible. This is what that looks like from the inside. It doesn't look like a villain. It looks like a consolidation memo. At 1300, he told the outpost. Nobody said anything for a long moment, and then Renick from the front said, Sir, what happens to the plate? Say again, Sergeant. Renick reached into his cargo pocket and pulled out that rectangle of steel he had cut off the tower platform 11 months earlier, and he'd been carrying it every day since, and he handed it to Cole. It had been filed flat and squared and polished. There was nothing written on it. Sir, I've been trying to figure out what to put on it for almost a year, Renick said. And every time I sat down to do it, everything I could think of was wrong. Everything I wrote down sounded like a bumper sticker. Cole turned it over in his hands. What changed? Sir, you did about 90 seconds ago. Rennick's voice carried across the whole motor pool. Because now it's not going to hang on a tower on a base that exists. It's going to hang somewhere else, and whoever reads it in 20 years is never going to have stood here. Cole looked at that piece of steel for a long time. Captain Carter, he said, Sir, come up here. She came up. He put the plate in her hand. You write it. Sir, I'm not. Captain Cole said, there are 62 people on this base and every one of them made a judgment about you in 4 seconds and every one of them was wrong. And I've had that sentence in my mouth for a year and it's the only true thing I've ever written. But it's about us. Somebody has to write the part that's about them. Emily stood there holding it. Sir, I can't say the 11 names. I know. That's the part that should be on it. I know that too, Cole said. Write what you can. She was quiet for a long moment in front of 62 people, and nobody rushed her. I'll need a week, she said. She took 9 days. On the 18th of April, at 1700 in the motor pool, in the exact spot where a rifle had hit the dirt, Emily Carter handed the plate back to Commander Nathan Cole, and the whole outpost was there, and Cole read it out loud because that was what she asked him to do. There were 2 lines on it. 11 men are not on this plate because I am not allowed to write them. They were carried here anyway. Cole's voice didn't make it through the second line clean, and nobody minded. Nobody said anything for a while. Then Peralta, who had 4 months of morning wind readings in a notebook with a real cover, said, Ma'am, where's it going to hang? That's the commander's call. Sir, Cole looked at the plate. It's going to hang in the entryway of the new position, he said, at eye level, where every single person who comes through that door has to walk past it, and it's going to have no explanation next to it, none, not one word, so that everybody who reads it has to ask somebody, and whoever gets asked is going to have to tell the whole thing from the beginning. Boone laughed and put her hand over her eyes. Sir, that's evil. That's maintenance's staff, Sergeant, Cole said. Tom, stories don't keep themselves. Redstone closed on the 12th of July. The last aircraft out carried 9 people, and Emily Carter was on it with the rifle across her knees in a canvas case that had been replaced twice in 9 years. And Renick was across from her, and neither of them looked out at it going away because they had both agreed in advance that they weren't going to. At 11:40, somewhere over the chocolate mountains, Renick said, "Ma'am, can I ask you a stupid one?" "Those are usually the good ones," Emily said, in Whitfield 3 seats back, who had heard that exact sentence in a truck 14 months earlier and had never told anybody, put his head back and grinned at the ceiling. "Ma'am, do you ever think about him, Marchand?" "Every day." "What do you think about Osab?" Emily was quiet for a while. "I think about the coffee," she said. "Ma'am?" 3 weeks, Sergeant, every morning. He'd come into the tent and he'd take the cup out of my hand and drink half of it and put it back every single day like a joke we had. Her thumb moved along the seam in the stock that old pin to repair without her seeming to know she was doing it. And on the Tuesday he did it, and he said the eastern slope was clear, and he walked out and 11 men were dead inside 4 minutes. Renick didn't say anything. "So people asked me if I hated him," Emily said. "And the answer is no, and it disappoints them. I didn't hate him. I couldn't get anywhere near hating him, because to hate a man, you have to be able to look at him, and every time I looked at him, I saw a person taking a cup out of my hand." She looked up. "That's what 9 years was, Sergeant. Not hate. Just a coffee cup. That's all that was ever in the room." Renick sat with that. "Ma'am, what happens now?" "Now, you go to the new position and you make sure that plate hangs at eye level." "That's not what I asked." "I know it isn't." "Ma'am," Emily looked out the window for the first time. "Sergeant, I've got a bag in the back of this aircraft," she said. "It's been packed since 2016. Same bag, same things in it, 9 years. "Yes, ma'am." "I'm going to unpack it," Emily said. Renick had to look away for a second. "Yes, ma'am." That's what happens now. At the new position, the plate went up in the entryway at eye level, with no explanation next to it exactly as ordered. It has been asked about 11,000 times. Corporal Danny Ruiz graduated Scout Sniper School in the top 3 of his class and asked to be sent back to whatever position had that plate in the entryway and got it, and now he's the one people ask. Private Ellery came back. It took him 14 months and 2 surgeries and a medical board he beat by refusing to stop showing up. He walks with something in his gait that he'll have forever, and when a 19-year-old makes a joke about somebody's gear in front of him, he says exactly what Renick told him to say, and he says it every time. Sergeant Victor Renick made staff sergeant and then gunnery sergeant, and he has driven to Yuma every March for 11 years now. And a boy who is 12 years old and has a big head knows the name of every man who was in the 2nd and 4th vehicles, and knows what his father was carrying, and knows how many seconds it took. Commander Nathan Cole asked in writing every 30 days for 6 years that the scope of the board be reopened. He was told no 71 times. On the 72nd, he was told nothing at all, and 11 weeks later, a policy directive was quietly issued in Washington concerning the authorization of intelligence collection operations conducted at manned installations without the knowledge of the installation commander. It named nobody. It fixed nothing that had already happened. Cole read it 4 times, and then he called Boone at 11 at night, and neither of them said very much. And Captain Emily Carter unpacked the bag. She teaches now. She has a house with a door that locks and a room in it where the rifle sits on 2 pegs on the wall, cleaned in the open where anybody can see it, and the crack in the reticle is still 4 minutes low left because she still won't let anybody touch it. Every student who comes through her course asks about it inside the first hour. Everyone. And she tells them the same thing, and she has never once varied it, and the ones who understand it go on to be very good, and the ones who don't go on to be fine. She says the rifle was never the point. She says 40 men looked at a piece of wood and metal and decided in 4 seconds what a person was worth. And they were not stupid men, and they were not cruel men, and they were wrong, and that being wrong that fast is the most ordinary thing a human being does. She says the shot was arithmetic. Anybody with 9 years in a notebook can do arithmetic, but nobody, she tells them, ever gets those 4 seconds back. The rifle everyone laughed at hangs on a wall in Virginia, and a plate that names no one hangs at eye level in a doorway in Arizona, and between the 2 of them, they have taught more Marines than any range in the Corps. Because the weapon was never outdated. The judgment was.